All right, everybody. Hello.
Look how pretty.
Hello.
Thank you. The big night. This is a big deal for me. All right. Came into my office, wore a mask, wore a glove, pushing the buttons, threw it away. All right. I've got my leopard print on. Tonight we should be talking about Tiger King. Tomorrow, maybe I'll wear it again. All right, I'm glad you're here. It's 5 o'clock. I'm going to get started because at 5:30 we have a guest. I have a ton of people coming in, so I'm going to admit them all right now. My air conditioning is running in here because it's hot. Can you guys hear that hum, or is it okay? No, you're okay?
I don't hear a hum.
It's okay.
All right, let's launch in. We have a couple newbies here. I want to launch in. Hi, Yvette. Hello, Nathan. I'm so psyched you guys are here. Please mute your microphone. And let's start off with a quick review, and then we're going to jump right in on level 3, detecting deception. So right now we're doing a review of what you've learned in the past. What was your big takeaway from last week, or what you might be applying since starting the course? Or if you read the book, Catch Me If You Can, or if you didn't, Scan Me If You Can, or you looked on Facebook at my mind maps of notes, and you want to chat about it. Oh, I see Meryl over there has a nice mind map coming into the big meeting with Frank Abagnale Jr. and Frank Marsh from the FBI, who I'm so excited. So we've got an FBI connection here tonight. Who would like to do a quick review of last week or the week before or the week before that, of what you're using? How are you inspired to look at your world in a different way? How's it coming? Everybody, anyone want to share? You can just unmute yourself because we have about 51 people on here right now. So wave to me and unmute yourself. What's your big takeaway so far?
So my big takeaway is how, this is Iris. So my big takeaway is now that I know this information, I can begin to notice myself maybe making pursed lips or that kind of thing. And it's a beginning of a inspection of my thoughts and what I'm thinking. And so what I'm discovering is that when I noticed that I'm doing some kind of body language that might not be helpful like this, I begin to wonder, maybe that's why I do it in front of people, like you were talking about resting bitch face. Maybe I make these unconscious things with my faces, and that might affect how I interact with others. So that was my just general takeaway.
Did you, by any chance, look at some pictures of yourself and see what you look like in those pictures?
What I did was I would catch myself, and then I would look in the mirror. Okay. And one day I looked in my mirror, and I had that look of contempt.
Oh,
or sometimes I would catch myself doing this, and I would go look in the mirror and go, what's that face? What's that thought? So that's what I would do. And I go, oh, maybe that's not the thought that I really want to have right now, and begin to examine it from that point of view.
All right, cool, good. So you boosted your emotional intelligence. Someone else, Gina B. Gina B. Gina B, I see you, sister. Let me unmute you. Go. No. Ready, go. Liz H. Sorry, it was coming up Gina. That's underneath you. Liz H.
This is Liz.
Hi, Liz.
Hi. So I actually have a question. There was someone in a meeting who gave a microexpression of contempt, and I followed up with them after the meeting, and they were very upset about something in the meeting. Okay. So it was really, really helpful. But what's interesting is they also sort of rest their face on a regular baseline on contempt. But it's not a micro expression, like it's sitting there like, like this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do you discern of whether it's like part of their baseline to have that going on? Or in that case, it was a micro expression of contempt and they confirmed that they were upset about something.
So what you're looking for is when a topic changes or a conversation changes, or you offer someone something or you confront something, you're looking for the change in their behavior.
Yeah.
Tomorrow in our session, we'll be talking about baseline. Some of the mistakes we've been making on baselining is we baseline people, and I've done this even with law enforcement for decades, I've taught the way I've been taught, which is you baseline people with innocuous questions, right? So small talk, and you get someone's baseline. This has now been proven to be inaccurate and ineffective. And here's why. If I baseline you by just having small talk, and then I'm about to confront you about that contemptuous face in the meeting, I'm letting you, as I do small talk, the liar knows you're about to, or they suspect you're about to talk about the problem in the meeting, because you don't normally small talk about, hey, what do you think of all the sports and athletics being canceled? So it's suspicious. And what they're doing while they're answering your ridiculous questions about small talk, they're actually formulating, oh, she's going to ask me about why I had a bad attitude in the meeting. So it gives them time to create their lie. So, what happens is when we baseline people with small talk, it actually hurts the innocent person. Because say you and I, Liz, are talking, and I'm like, anyway, so your kids like sports? What do they think about none of the athletic teams playing all the pro sports? How do they feel? And you're like, well, that's kind of random, but you go with it. You're like, oh, Janine's my friend. We're talking family. And then I go, by any chance, is there any, why would two people tell me that you contacted my husband directly? Two people told me you emailed my husband directly, including him. Why would he tell me something like that? Why are you corresponding with my husband? Or why would people say that? And I'd make my question really simple, but I go in for the jugular. And the innocent person who thinks, oh, we're just being friends, having small talk, gets blindsided by this confrontation. So their baseline changes. They end up looking deceptive because they get nervous and are uncomfortable and they don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
Now they overcompensate. Like, where did this just come from? So tomorrow we're going to talk about there's a bonus session tomorrow evening. We're going to talk about how do we baseline accurately. So I love your question. It's a great layup for me to slam dunk it tomorrow. How can we baseline people? Bottom line, you're looking for a change in their behavior. So if all of a sudden there's a shift, that's what you're concerned about. And body language happens in clusters. So you're not just looking for contempt. You're looking for them fixing their hair, covering their mouth, patting the back of their hair, and linking contempt. So you're looking for multiples, clusters. So great question. And I'm psyched that you asked the person, and in fact, they were contemptuous.
Yeah. And I followed up. It was a great thing for you to say too, like not to discuss it in the meeting, but talk to them one-on-one, and
yes,
it was really helpful.
Yes, good. And you can do this with kids. I just did this with my son Angus, who's 14. I bought Charlie an app, a video game that said it's E for everyone, but it's a little violent. But Charlie, my 6-year-old's like, but Mom, look, it's E for everyone. I'm like, oh, okay. And then Angus leaked contempt. He's 14, like this. And I went downstairs in private, not in front of Charlie. I go, what's going on, buddy? He goes, I don't like that you're buying this app for Charlie. It says E for everyone, but it says 10 and over. He's 6, Mom. There's violence in this app. So even with our kids, we can spot these emotions. Cool. Anyone else? A couple more people share last week or the week before. I know we have a couple newbies. Any newbies? I see Eddie Perez on here. Hey, Eddie, I'm psyched you're here. Hopefully some people on your team are here too. Kelly, Haney? Is it Haney or Haney? Haney. There you go. Haney? All right. So,
I also have a question instead of feedback from last week.
yeah.
When we're talking about like awareness, and Iris had mentioned, you had asked, have you looked at pictures of yourself? And Iris mentioned she'd looked in the mirror and such. I really value authenticity. So I worry.
I lost you, sister. So you froze up on me.
Yeah, I noticed that a couple times. It's saying my.
I hear you. So are you asking how not to be a phony because you value authenticity?
Well, yeah, because I mean, like, how do you avoid being a phony if you're looking at, and studying how you are?
So let me get this straight. Your mother pulls up unexpectedly in your driveway, or your aunt or your best friend. You just leave your house the messy that it is. You don't like put away the coats and throw shit in the closet, or do the dishes really quick because your best friend says, hey, I'm dropping something off, pre-coronavirus. You just say, hey, it is what it is. You don't throw clothes on. You're like, hey, you're more than welcome to come in. I'm naked. I just took a shower. I like to air dry. So feel free to come in, but I'm not throwing clothes on quickly. So I think I I try my best to be authentic. I say who I am here, and on my keynotes is who I am. You could ask my buddy, I think Lena Cisco's coming on. You can ask, Eddie Perez, who's one of my clients who I've talked with personally. You can ask my friend right here, Kathy Ross, who
True
I
story.
love. I love Kathy. We've gone camping together. So, but does it mean that I don't try to be my best in every situation? No.
Well, what I'm saying is, if you're trying to control how your face is and stuff, I have the perception, I have the hallucination that you can be throwing off all these other odd things to be read that aren't accurate.
So I think I did this on one of the other courses that we had, which are the steps to doing anything new. So the first step is you're unconsciously incompetent. You don't know you suck at it. So if you don't take the time to look at pictures or videos of what you look at, you have no awareness of, which is emotional intelligence, of what does your face say. When you sit like this, you have no awareness that you're sending the wrong message. Inside you feel confident, but outside you're saying, I don't even want to be here, I'm defensive. When in fact that might not be true. So at first it's going to feel weird, and that's just anything new, right? So unconsciously incompetent, then you realize consciously competent. You're in the next step. Now you know, oh, I have a really bad first impression. No wonder why my boss says I'm not a team player, and I don't understand it because I buy the cupcakes in manila envelopes when it's someone's birthday and pass around the office. How am I not a good team player? I'm the cake girl, and you don't understand it, but you don't realize it's this. And so then the last two steps, as you may remember from a couple of classes ago, is consciously competent. You're like, oh, okay, I did a steeple. That felt pretty good, actually. I felt that. I felt good in it. I felt powerful in it. It changes your body. Remember with Dr. Conte and Dr. Lisa Genova from our first session, our body influences our brain. So now you try this and you're like, okay, you take a picture and now you start doing it. And now the last step is consciously competent. You just naturally steeple. So I get it. It feels weird in the beginning and it totally feels inauthentic, just like riding a bike or when I did stand-up comedy when I was 24 and 25 and 26. And I thought it was funny because I'm from Boston and I have the antics and, I didn't realize you need a laugh like every 20 seconds. Like in 1 minute, you're supposed to have like 5 jokes. That's exhausting. So I bombed. And I opened up, did stand-up comedy at the World Trade Center in New York City. I was the opening act for a little country group called the Dixie Chicks. And this was at the World Trade Center. I was with ATF in one of the lower buildings. And so they had this courtyard outside and I was the opening act to the Dixie Chicks and I was terrible. People were talking, eating their lunch. And I thought I was doing pretty good in the comedy clubs until I went outside where people were eating. And I'll never, ever forget it for the rest of my life. It was one of my epic failures. And it was a good lesson for me to learn that when we learn something new, it's not always easy.
Right. Excellent. Thank you. So
that was a great question. One more, and then I want to dive in. I'm not sure if we have Frank Abagnale Jr. on the phone just yet. I don't know if he's here because we have 56 people, so he may be in here. Frank, if you're out there, Mr. Abagnale, give me a wave or say unmute yourself so I know you're here as I get ready to introduce you. Anybody else? One more share? Anybody out there? Let me see. You can just put your mic on because you're many screens. I see Kerry and Tom and Kelly and Christine and Alicia. All right, Judy, are you waving to me, dear?
I am.
All right, sister, talk to me.
I am. So I just find it fascinating, just the things that I can't unsee or unhear. So I noticed as I'm watching so much, either videos or television or whatever, where people are shrugging their shoulders or they're saying, I did that or I didn't do that. So their head, that they're not their body is not congruent with their words. Anyway, it's just, I appreciate it. And I don't know that I'm right in my assessment, but I'm noticing it. And
so remember too about the head nods, there's always a second conversation happening in people's heads. So that's why at sporting events, your team could win. I like the Celtics. I like basketball. So I could be like, unbelievable. I'm so excited the Celtics just won. Not since Larry Bird back in the day have we had a team so great. It's great. But I'm shaking my head no because my internal dialogue is saying, unbelievable. I can't believe it. but the words are not coming
Okay.
out, I can't believe it. The words are coming out, this is amazing, this is awesome. But then my head is changing how I might be perceived. So this is important for us to know, is once you have a boost in emotional intelligence and self-awareness, you'll start to know, oh, my pattern is to say positive things, and I shake my head in like shock, like, I am so happy you're here. I would love to go out again. I would love to go out with you again. And they're shaking their head because what they might be thinking is, I work for the State Department. I don't know when I can do it. Or, wow, this is, I can't even believe you would want to go out with me a second time. I can't believe it. But I'm verbally saying something positive. You follow me?
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to dive in, and I'm omitting a couple more people. I don't know, Mr. Abagnale Jr. is here right now. Let me see. I don't know what his login name might be. Let's see. Let's do a search for Frank. How about that? There is a Frank. I don't know if that's our Frank, Abagnale Jr. Frank, are you out there? All right, we're gonna dive in, and Frank is expecting to come on in 10 minutes, so maybe he's here early. I'm gonna just unmute him really quick. Okay, no, that might be him. Hold on, let me do a chat. I guess that doesn't work. Okay.
Are you trying to talk to me?
Oh, that's my other Frank. Oh, that's my other Frank. You'll meet with him in a bit. Thanks, Frank. That's my buddy.
No worries.
Thanks, buddy. All right, so let's dive in, and hopefully Frank Abagnale will hop on the call as well. So let me, hold on, I'm getting some emails and voicemails. Hold on a second. Okay, let's share my screen. Okay, give me 1 second, guys. I want to just shoot Frank a text. Not Frank Marsh, Frank Abagnale. Stand by. Did you guys, real quick, did you have to, so his office just wrote to me, did you have to set up a password when you guys came on?
No.
You just clicked the link. What about Frank Marsh? Frank, did you have to do a password, buddy, when you first came on?
No, I did not.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna keep an eye on my emails here. All right. Sorry, technical difficulties. We want to make sure he gets on. They sent me an email at 5:14.
Does he have Zoom downloaded though?
Is that the deal?
Yeah, probably. He probably needs to download.
What about even if it's on your phone, you have to download it, or?
Yeah, because that's what it opens up through.
Oh boy.
I think it's easier if you do. There might be a go around, but I do think it just is real easy if you have downloaded the app.
Janine,
Yeah.
it's Stacy.
Hi, Stacey.
Hi. I actually, from your text message, got the meeting ID and then went to the computer and logged into Zoom that way and just put in the meeting ID and it brought me right in. I didn't have to do a password or anything. And I don't normally use Zoom.
Okay, so I wonder, I think somewhere here, hold on. I think
I can give you the ID if you want it.
I can invite him.
I'm here.
Oh, Frank Abagnale Jr.?
Yes.
Oh, hello, sir. All right, I'm about to introduce you. I'm
Okay.
so glad you made it. We're all here waiting with bated breath, and we cannot thank you enough for your great service for our country. And we'll
Thank you.
chat with you in just a brief minute. We're so excited. He's here, everyone. Unmute and say yay.
Yay!
Yay!
Yay.
Hey.
Yes.
Hey!
Yay. We're here to give you lots of love, sir. Lots of love.
All right.
We're so excited. All right. Stand by. All right. Here we go. In the last several years, we have all been given a front row seat to the vast world of deception. Some shocking and not so shocking headlines have included people like wolves that disguise themselves in sheep clothing. This is whether it's personally, professionally, whether this has to do with your finances, your identity, whether this has to do with a dating app. What's the #1 picture you should not put on social media? What are some of the biggest mistakes? When should you use a debit card and when should you stay away? What are some simple steps you can take to protect yourself? And is there research, which there is, on the kinds of people that do get scammed? And do you fall into one of those categories, and what can you do about it? These wolves in sheep's clothing. This is a wolf in sheep's clothing right here, Chris Watts. You may remember a couple of years ago, Chris Watts, he had these crocodile pleas to help find his pregnant wife, Janine, and their 2 young daughters, Bella, who was 4, and Celeste, who was 3, which he later graphically confessed to strangling and killing them both, all 3. First, he said he did it to his wife, and then said the wife had killed his 2 daughters, and then later confessed to all of them. I will not go into the graphic details. I was brought in through social media on what are my thoughts about this guy. He was likable and charming and in great shape. And as soon as I watched him, I immediately knew there was a problem here. Sometimes it's not just what you see, it's sometimes what you don't see. And what we did not see was fear and sadness, but yet we saw anger and contempt and disgust, which immediately, along with some of this language this guy, Chris Watts, used, made me suspicious. Chris Watts pled guilty. He's now in jail. Death penalty is off the table, but he has no parole. He'll be life in prison. Maybe you're like me, or you know someone like me, where I think, does it ever like click in later, like, what did I do? Like, my kids are gone. Like, I make impulsive decisions about stupid stuff, like eating a box of Krispy Kreme donuts because the light was on. I have a rule, like if I go buy Krispy Kreme and the light's on, I got to stop and get a dozen donuts for the family. But by the time I get home, there's not always a dozen left. So right here, you may remember this, the whole cheating scandal that took place with the college admission scandal. It put celebs like Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin and her husband on the front page of every rag mag for months. This case is still not even closed. Then we had this guy, remember him? Singer R. Kelly. I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. We didn't love that song. This guy, in my world with detecting deception, he is literally a gift from the heavens because he is so stupid to do interviews. This guy, if pants were on fire, if it was possible, this guy would have had him on fire. He was charged with 10 counts of felony aggravated criminal sex abuse, gave a dramatic interview with Gayle King on CBS this morning. I was then interviewed on CNN because what I said was, as interesting as R. Kelly was, Gayle King, her toe slowly went up in the air with this excitement cue, and her face remained blank. It was as if she knew she had interviewing gold, and that's been watched by millions. I think about 6 million people now. He oddly stood up, cried and screamed while addressing the camera directly. Quit playing. I didn't do this stuff. This is not me. I'm fighting for my fucking life. he said to the cameras. The unbelievable. We'll be talking about this in our special episode tomorrow night, each of these cases. And then the list goes on and on. We've got the big cases like Jeffrey Epstein, American financier with elite social circles. I won't even mention some of the people he was connected with. He pled guilty to a felony charge of solicitation of prostitution involving a minor, was later in jail awaiting trial regarding sex trafficking of minors, when on August 10th, 2019, he was found dead in his cell and the medical examiner ruled it a suicide. You may remember an unbelievable interview with Prince Andrew, the Duke of York. He leaked numerous verbal and nonverbal hotspots during a shocking interview he gave at Buckingham Palace, hello, with sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, talking about his relationship with him. And he had his own allegations against him from one of Epstein's victims. Jussie Smollett. This guy, I stayed up all night long doing a YouTube live or Facebook live. Former Empire actor Jussie Smollett. He did a terrible job, by the way, acting. I don't know how he became an actor. He should have used his skills when he went on this television show. He did a terrible job lying about a racist and homophobic hate crime that supposedly happened to him outside his apartment in Chicago. The deception was through the roof. Later today, we have our second guest is Frank Marsh from the FBI. I'm interested to know if the two Franks have met one another and if they know one another. And right now, as we dive in, there's everything from corporate scams to the political world. I stay away from politics. As you might imagine, it is a nightmare to dip my toe into that world, so I stay away from it. And we had this case, which was unbelievable, which was Elizabeth Holmes. Elizabeth Holmes, mute your phone if you're just joining us, please. Mute your phone, please. Elizabeth Holmes, she did this whole scam. It was unbelievable that you could have a little prick of your finger and a blood test could test so many results, could get so many results. In 2015, Forbes magazine called her the youngest and wealthiest self-made female billionaire in America, and she scammed the world with her non-functioning blood testing technology at Theranos. How can you spot when the people in your life are trying to scam you or cheat you or lie to you? And what happens when you bust them? What do we do next? What questions do we ask? What can we do moving forward so we're never misled or scammed again? Our first guest, I'm so excited, is Frank Abagnale Jr. In my world, he is a hero, a superhero, worked for the FBI for decades, I think it was over 4 decades, and unbelievable. You know, Steven Spielberg made a movie about his life, his young life at the age of 14. And Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, or Mr. Abagnale. At the age of 14, a judge calls him into a courtroom. He's taken out of school. The judge doesn't even look at his face. And what happens is the judge says, hey, your parents are getting divorced. Pick which parent you want to live with. Immediately, Frank, little 14-year-old. So if you have kids, I want you to imagine I have a 14-year-old son, and I have 2 little guys, 2 more boys, 6 and 5. I can't imagine a judge without giving eye contact and without me talking to my 14-year-old first, saying, pick who you're going to live with. He runs out of the courtroom and his life, as you know, was forever changed. Elements of the movie were changed. Frank had some siblings. From my understanding, it's possible that Steven Spielberg didn't include the siblings because to kind of give them the siblings saving face, because Abagnale is such a unique name. And he impersonated a doctor. He then went and impersonated an attorney, but then went to passed the bar, and he became a fictitious pilot, not because he wanted to see the world, because he never thought anything out in advance. It just impromptu kind of happened. And the first checks he wrote, he had money in the bank and had some advances. And then when that ran out, he tried to get more advances and saw some flight people, pilots and flight attendants walking down the street in Pan Am uniforms. And the rest is history. If you've seen the movie, he went in and got a sticker off a toy and put it on an ID and made a fake ID, and never once flew on Pan Am, never once, because then people might know, right? He flew on so many other airlines. When he was eventually caught by the FBI, he served a couple years in jail abroad and then a couple years here in the States. until the FBI asked him if he would like to, and they didn't say it was the FBI, I don't think, if he'd like to go help his United States government, which he did. He'll be the first one to tell you he did not come out of jail a changed man. This happened when he met his amazing wife, who, if you've ever watched a video or read anything about Frank Abagnale Jr., you'll know that the first person he will credit is his wife and 3 amazing sons. Along with working at the FBI, when his time was up, he realized, wow, these people have ethics, these people have values, these people are incredible. So I'm so excited to bring on our first guest here, and feel free to ask him questions. We have 30 minutes with him. I'm going to stop sharing my computer. Mr. Frank Abagnale Jr. It's, where are you, my friends? I'm going to put you here and see if you pop up. Let's see. Let me see, Mr. Abagnale.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I do not see you just yet. Stand by, let me back it up. Will you wave to me so I can see? Oh, there you are.
Oh, here.
There. Does it say Kelly on there?
Yes, but that's fine.
Okay. Well, hello, Mr. Abagnale. We're so excited that you're here.
Glad to be with you. Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much. I would love to dive right in. I cannot thank you enough. Are your family and are your 3 sons and your wife and you all healthy during this COVID?
Everybody's doing great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for your service with the FBI and protecting our great country here in the United States. I enjoyed reading your book. I listened to an audio version and read it all in a day. And I don't know if you caught the beginning, but these are my mind maps of everything I learned from your book.
Right, great.
It's a great book, Scam You If You Can. I told everyone here to buy the book. I'm doing about 90% of it wrong. I use a debit card all the time. I write checks left and right. I use a Wi-Fi at the airport. I'm really blowing it. So my credit reports are not on lockdown. They're not frozen.
A little history about that book, Scam Me If You Can. As you know, I've written several books. I've spent most of my career dealing with frauds against governments, financial institutions, corporations, and banks. And about 5 years ago, ARP asked me to help them deal with crimes against seniors. They have 38 million members. And so I started working with ARP about crimes and scams committed against seniors and millennials as well. And then they asked me if I'd write a book about it. And in writing the book, they asked me to cover everything, scams that occur with millennials, scams with seniors, embezzlement scams, Bitcoin scams, investment scams, sweepstakes scam, romance scam. So I set out to write Scam Me If You Can. It is their book. All the royalties in advance goes to ARP. I wrote it for them. And basically, I tried to cover everything, but I was amazed in doing the research and writing it, how many scams there were and how many scams were perpetrated and how much money that people would lose, hundreds of thousands of dollars, their pensions, their home, their life savings to some of these scams. And then I also was surprised to realize that millennials are actually scammed more often than seniors, but seniors lose more money because they have more money.
That's unbelievable. Why do you think it's so important that we learn the techniques that are in your book?
Everyone should understand that if you understand, it's not a lot to understand. Every scam has 2 red flags, no matter how sophisticated it is or how amateur it is, whether it's a romance scam or a sweepstakes scam or grandparent scam, there has to be 2 red flags to make it work. And the first red flag is at some point, I'm going to ask you for money, but you have to give me that money immediately. So if I say I'm from the IRS, you have to give me a credit card, you have to give me bank account number. It has to be done right this moment. Go down to Walmart and get a green dot card, call me back with the number. It has to be instant. The second red flag is I'm going to ask you for information. Eventually, I'm going to ask you what's your social security number, what's your date of birth, what's your bank account number, a credit card number. And so when that enters it, even if you're in a romance scam with someone online for over 2 years and it's been a great relationship back and forth, at some point they may say, well, why don't you come see me? Well, I've been sick and I have to have this operation, but I don't have the money for it. And if I don't get the operation, I might die. Well, maybe I can help you with that. That is that red flag that money has come into play and they're asking you for money.
This happened to my mother-in-law. She was dating a guy for like 6 or 7 months, but every time they were supposed to meet, he was at an oil field out of the country. He sent her a picture of a bracelet he bought her. She told me, she goes, Janine, this is the real deal. He bought me a bracelet. I go, eventually he's going to ask you for money. This guy, it was a scam, and lo and behold, it was a scam. My husband took a screenshot of him and searched it on the internet and found the scam.
Absolutely. And then we have, I do a podcast for ARP every week called The Perfect Scam. And basically, we interview people who have literally been scammed, and they're good enough to come on and say what happened to them, how much money they lost. But I had a young Marine who said that someone had taken his picture off of Facebook, and he was in his dress blues, in his late 20s, very good looking guy, had all his medals on. And then he started taking that picture and emailing women saying that's him. And he started making these relationships, which he had nothing to do with. He didn't even know what was going on. And eventually, just like you said, he said, I'm going to Afghanistan. Could you get me a $200 guard because I can't get any money over there? And then money comes into play and that red flag pops up.
What are the common myths about fraud and deception?
I think that people, first of all, as I put out in my book, anybody can be scammed. I know I can be scammed. Anybody can be scammed. And some of the people I've interviewed on the podcast, 2 former FBI directors, long retired now, have been scammed. I talked to this chief editor of Time magazine, 35 years at Time. He was retired, got scammed. So no matter how intelligent you are, you can be scammed. And first thing to know is that you can be scammed. That's the first lesson. And then to make sure that you understand how these scams work. And I wrote that book more as also a reference book. So if something came up, you could pick that book up and go back and look that up and say, yeah, this is exactly what's happening to me. This is what they're saying to me, or this is what they're emailing me. And you know it's a scam. Education is the most powerful tool to fighting crime. And whether I'm training FBI agents or whether I'm training bankers or whether I'm training seniors, if I say to you, this is the scam, this is how it works, this is what they say, this is what they do, you're smart enough that the next time you get that call, the next time you get that email, you go, whoa, I already know about this, I know what this is. And that's why education is so important to dealing with any type of crime.
I always say you can't unhear it, unsee it, or unexperience it. So once we share it with you and you do it yourself, or you try it on, or you hear it, you can't unhear it and unexperience it or unlearn it, right?
That's exactly right.
What do you think is the most common reason people don't take advice on to safeguard themselves, their finances, their identity, their people and their finances? What do you think's stopping us from making smarter decisions here?
Listen, scam artists are very, very good at what they do. And they can convince most people about anything. So again, they're not in a hurry. You know, I tell a lot of some of the women that email me about being scammed by someone in a romance scam. Well, I was involved with him for over 1.5 years. Did you ever meet him? No. Did you met him online? Yes. And he'd call me, he'd talk to me, and he never asked me for anything. But then one day he asked me about giving him some money for something, and I did it, and that's the red flag. So I don't have a problem with someone having a relationship online. I have a problem when somebody starts to ask you for money or information.
Oh, I'm losing you. I think I just muted you by mistake. Uh-oh. Frank, can you unmute yourself? Someone else came on and I muted you by mistake.
There we go.
There you go. Thank you. Sorry.
So what I was saying, what I was saying, if someone missed that, is that, you know, these people who get in these romance scams, they'll carry on for 1.5 years, but you're just one of 10 people they're doing it with, 20 people they're doing it with. And they may wait 1 year before they ever come forward and ask you for something. But the bottom line is, you never met them, you didn't solicit the initial contact, and now someone is asking you for money or for information, and that's the time you need to stop and say, whoa, who really is this person, and what are they really after?
I saw this in your book. You said, I loved it. So thank you for the, you know, ARP, and thank you for doing this. Scam Me If You Can. We're with Frank Abagnale Jr. Instead of saying, what's your monthly mortgage, they'll say something, this is what you put in the book. Let me ask you something. It sounds like you have a wonderful home there. How much is that mortgage each month? They say it in a likable way.
Exactly.
They say it like they're your friend. Instead of saying, when did your spouse die? They'd say, listen, I know you loved your husband very much. You must miss him terribly. If you don't mind me asking, how long has he been gone?
Right, exactly.
Right?
And you know, scam artists follow the headlines. So whatever the headlines are, that's the scam. So now the scam is all about the COVID-19. We have a vaccine. You can come get the vaccine. You can buy this medicine online that will cure you. They basically are coming up with all kinds of things about did you get your check yet? No, I haven't got my check. Well, that's because we don't have enough information about you to send you the check. So what's your social security number? What's your bank routing number, account number, so we can mail your check out and get it out? Again, they're calling. And you know, caller ID is one of the easiest things to manipulate. So when you see on the caller ID, IRS, United States government, Social Security, police department, FBI, anybody can make it say anything they want. That doesn't mean that's them on the other end of the phone.
Unbelievable. You know, in the book, Scam Me If You Can, you tell a story about a doctor, and he was being asked to donate some money, and they knew everything about him because on a social media post, he had shared his favorite drink. He was out with another doctor at a bar with his favorite drink. So when the person was trying to scam him, impersonating his doctor friend, they're like, hey, thanks for buying the drink the other night. Thanks for treating. By the way, will you donate to this immediately? I'm trying to raise money. And the doctor just so happened to call his doctor friend and found out the whole thing was a scam because we put too much information on social media, right?
That's exactly right. Because if you asked me a year ago, I'd tell you that most of the emails that I see, phishing emails, the grammar's bad, the spelling's bad, pronunciation's bad. Today, they've gotten a much more sophisticated. So I saw an email the other day that someone sent me that simply said, hi, Joan, great having lunch with you today. We need to do that more often. I hope you and your husband, Randy, have a great time at Disney World this week with the kids. When you get back, give me a call and we'll get together for lunch. By the way, I saw this on YouTube, thought you'd enjoy it. Here's the link, signed Barbara. Well, what they're doing is they're going to social media where she's already said she had lunch with her friend, that she's mentioned her husband's name a long time ago. She's even mentioned her kid's name. She mentioned they were going to Disney World. So they're taking information off of social media in real time and then using that to convince you that that's the other person on the other end of the phone. Or
Unbelievable. What do you wish you had known when that judge told you years ago to choose which parent to live with because they were getting divorced? What do you wish you knew on that particular day?
Well, you know, I don't like to use my parents' divorce as a crutch. I always just believed had that judge, and I was 16 years old, and that judge, had he stopped and said, young man, we're going to break for 10 minutes, like take you back to my office. And I went back and he explained to me, your parents are getting a divorce. You'll be able to see both your parents. You'll spend some time with each of your parents. This is how it will work. Because he didn't do any of that and just said it so abruptly, that's what caused me to run out and be on my own. And, you know, a lot of kids ran away back in the 60s, but they got into drugs and Haight-Ashbury and the hippie scene and all that. I ended up on the streets of New York and I quickly realized I'm going to have to survive. I'm going to have to come up with some way to get by. And so I I knew I looked older. So the first thing I did is altered my driver's license to make me 10 years older so that people would believe I was 26 and not 16. But it started like that. But I blame everything I do. I take full responsibility for. I don't blame anybody else for my actions. I'm just very fortunate that I live in an amazing country where I could have done the things I did, spent my time in prison, served my time, and then went to work with my country for 44 years, raised 3 wonderful sons, been married to my wife for 43 years, and my own son is an FBI agent for 14 years. I mean, where else in the world could that happen?
That's amazing. I'm so proud of you. You're a hero. Someone else has their mic on, so if you can turn it off, please, that would be great. What hurdles did you personally, should I call you Mr. Abagnale?
Frank, please, Frank.
Frank, Janine. What hurdles did you personally face once you started helping the FBI, and how did you overcome those hurdles?
You know, I always said, I've only seen the movie Catch Me If You Can twice, and I always say that the most powerful scene to me was a scene where I walked into what was really the Washington field office, and all of the agents, who back then were men, white, no women, and they basically all stood up, and they very much resented the fact that I was there. And it took years and years to build credibility and trust. And that's the same with the clients I've had over the years, Fortune 500 companies and banks. It took years and years to build that up. And that's why when I get emails a lot of times from someone in prison who said, look, I'm a true expert on a computer. I know everything about cyber. I want to come out and change my life, go to work for Microsoft or someone like that. I tell them it's not that easy. You have to first earn their trust. No one's going to just put you in a job like that without you proving yourself and earning that trust. So it took me years to do that. But teaching at the FBI Academy, I've taught 2 generations of FBI agents, including my own son. But basically that they knew who I was from day one. And so they knew what I was doing and what my background was. That helped a great deal, but it took a long time. And that was the most difficult part of turning over that leap and changing your life.
Is your son's name who works at the FBI? Is it Eric? Is it Eric or what's your son's name that works?
My son is Scott, and he is the unit chief over the FBI's crisis negotiations unit at Quantico.
That's amazing. I loved in the forward of your book how the former assistant director of training was like congratulating all the new FBI agents, and he's like, Abagnale? Do you know? And he's like, yeah, that's my dad. And he goes, I'm going to let your dad have it because you didn't use any strings. And I love how you say in the book, listen, it's not easy to be an FBI agent. There's directors who have had children, directors of the FBI who were unable to get in. So what a great testament to your son being an agent and saving lives when people are kidnapped, yes?
Truly the proudest moment in my life was watching my son cross that stage. I don't think anything in my life that will happen to me or anything else that will top that, and absolutely very proud of him, as I am very proud of all the men and women at the FBI who do an amazing job every day keeping all of us safe. And so yeah, I'm thrilled to be even had part of being involved with the FBI.
That's amazing. I know the FBI has a lot of respect for you. I shared a stage with you, but we never met at the IACP years ago, International Chiefs of Police. It was either that or a fraud conference at ASAE or something. But I remember you were on earlier in the day, and I never had a chance to say hello. So thank you for your service. As I wind down my questions, I'd love to open it up for anyone else. I just have a couple. You know, when you went from being in jail into the FBI, I know they had, if I heard this correctly, they had you pretend to be different leaders in different professions, and you had to go in almost undercover. Is that true?
Yeah, in the beginning, it was just for undercover purposes, but I had the ability, and I had a photographic memory. I had the ability to be able to say to me, you're a lieutenant in the Navy, you've been in the Army or the Navy this long, this is your expertise on this particular missile. You know, I was able to do those things and learn it for a good enough time to get in, get information, and get out. I was able to fake it long enough to be able to do that.
Did you ever fail at any of those undercovers, or were you ever nervous at one point? Or?
Well, always nervous, but I think that I was always smart enough to really understand what I was going to do. And I was also smart enough, you're only going to get away with this for a very short period of time. So you have to get as much information as you can in that period of time.
You know, when people see the movie Catch Me If You Can, what I think most people don't realize is this all began, you know, 14, you hear the news from the judge without him even looking at you or bringing him into his chambers. And this all was over by 21, you know, I mean, this was, you didn't spend a life of crime. This was a resource that was kind of fun. And I've heard you say about that confidence that, you know, if you had to do it years later, you probably wouldn't have been as confident, but
no, you know, you're absolutely right, because I always tell people, they say, well, you were a genius, you were smart. I said, no, I was an adolescent. I had no fear of being caught. I had no fear of consequences. So I didn't sit out in front of the bank in New York with a check in my hand and go, okay, here's the plan. I'm going to go in, and if they say this, I'll do this. If they do this, I'll do this. I just went in and did it because I was so young. I always believed that had I been a little older, maybe started doing that at 21 or 22, I'd have never got away with half the things I did, because I would have kept rationalizing that that'll never work. I'll never get away with that. Can't be
You'd
done.
anticipate the consequences more, probably.
Absolutely.
What are you curious about right now?
I'm just, you know, scams are up 350% since this COVID-19. So people are being scammed constantly for millions and millions of dollars over just the last month or so with all these scams. So I'm very concerned about this COVID-19. when we get past all this, I am concerned a little bit about where we're going with technology. For example, we have the ability now to shut off someone's pacemaker. All we have to do is walk by them, and any bodily device they have on them controlled by a chip, we could shut it off, speed it up, basically assassinate the person. We can do that now. The question is, we have limited to 35 feet. You have to be in 35 feet of the individual. The question is, what if it's 350 feet or 35 miles 5 years from now? We have the ability now to pull a car over on a chase, and basically most cars have at least 240 computer components in it. So you can shut the window, lock the windows down, turn on the airbag, shut the motor off, lock the person in the car. But you're again limited to 35 feet of that vehicle. You have to be up on that vehicle within 35 feet of range. But 5 years from now, that might be 350 miles away. So the ability to use cyber crimes and technology to get to someone to cause more than just financial harm, but to literally cause bodily harm.
I read of a, thank you for sharing that. I read of a story last year where a CEO of a video gaming company had this happen. He was not investing money into security, cybersecurity. And one time he was driving on the road, so the person must have been pretty near him, hijacked his car while driving, the radio, all these things started happening. When he went home, he had a key lock that was electronic. The combination was locked. It scared the daylights out of him. And I think it was a woman, a CEO of a big video gaming company.
Yeah, those kind of things are very scary, and you wonder what about 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
I do wonder about that. As I turn it over, what's the best question someone's ever asked you?
Well, I noticed you asked me about pictures on social media. I always remind people that identity thieves need 2 keys, and they always go to social media, because the 2 keys they need is if you were smart enough, not careless enough to basically say on your social media site like Facebook, where you were born and your date of birth. Those are the 2 most important keys they need. All the rest of the information is easy to come by. So I tell people, never state on Facebook where you were born and your date of birth. Otherwise you're saying, just come steal my identity.
And don't take a picture straight on, right? Because they can
Don't take straight on pictures because of facial recognition. I can take that picture and use it on ID. I can track you with PitPat and some of these technologies that are out there by facial recognition.
So we want to do this upward angle so we look really pretty when we take
or
our
a group
picture.
of people or you're playing baseball, shooting golf, doing some activity, but not a straight on passport type photo.
No one has ever told me that. What's one profession you would love to attempt other than what you did with the FBI?
I know that's a tough one. I kind of like what I do today. I don't think I want to do anything else.
I think that's a good answer. And if there's a heaven, if heaven exists and you get to the pearly gates, what would you want God to say to you when you walk through the gates?
I want him to say that you made some mistakes in your life, but you did the right thing and turned your life around and did very positive things with your life. Most of all, you were married to your one and only wife for 43 years and brought 3 great sons into the world, 5 grandchildren. I hope that I'm judged based on what type of husband I was and what type of father I was. That's the only 2 important things to me.
And you're saving lives, because when someone is defrauded, suicide rate goes up, depression goes up, anxiety goes up, and you contributing from not only with the FBI, but writing all of your books and this book for ARP about Scamming If You Can, you literally are saving lives and then saving the lives of our children and our children's children. So
well, I appreciate that. And as I mentioned, I learned early on 44 years ago that education was the most powerful tool to fighting crime. And if I could educate people, I could put a dent in those crimes.
no ATM cards, right? No debit cards.
No, I don't use any debit cards. You always use a credit card because your credit card, you have 0 liability. You could get on $1 million charge on your credit card tomorrow, and that's not your liability. And with your credit card, when you pay the bill or the minimum due, your credit score goes up. When you use a debit card, they're allowing people access into your bank account to steal your money. And in most post-investigations of retail hacks where they stole credit card information, it's usually ends up that person that had to wait 3 months while the bank investigated to get my money back The other person said, no, the credit card company said, just ignore that on the statement, pay the minimum amount due, and off you go. So a credit card is very safe. And by the way, people ask me, how do you get money? I tell my bank, I only want an ATM card, not an ATM debit card, just an ATM card. And I use that to get cash anywhere in the world and covered by the same rules that cover my credit card.
And I read in your book, when you do use that card, make sure you're covering the screen when you put the number, and make sure there's not a camera behind you. Because some of these places you go up to the ATM machine, especially maybe if it's at a gas station or something, there could be a camera behind you watching you enter your number. So cover your card, make sure there's a camera not behind you. Yes?
You got it. Yeah, you just have to use some common sense and be very careful, you know, what you do when you do those kind of transactions. As you mentioned earlier about Wi-Fi, I remind people that when you're in the airport, it says it's public Wi-Fi. It didn't say it's private Wi-Fi. It said it's public Wi-Fi, telling you that anything you do on your laptop or your phone is someone else can see it.
By the way, I call my sister today, riding in here, my middle sister, and I go, stop using Wi-Fi at the airport. Oh my gosh. We have a couple of questions. I know we're right at the last minute mark.
No
Do you have
problem.
a couple minutes for a couple of
Sure,
questions?
absolutely.
Thank you so much, sir. Elise, is that you raising your hand, sister? Feel free to chime in, Elise.
Frank, thank you so much for doing this. Catch Me If You Can, and your story is one of my favorite all-time movies. I was just telling Janine, I've seen it like 50 times. You have an incredible story, so thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you.
Recently, my mom and I had a chuckle when she got called that she won the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes, and they said, we need to get your bank account number to start depositing the check. And thank goodness my mother had enough sense to not give them her bank account, and we looked into it, and it proved that it was not, obviously not. So, but I mean, I think some of the scams where people ask you for money are a little bit more obvious. But are you saying that, like, if you get an email from someone, should you never be using your bank account or credit card or anything in an email? What about some of these apps that are asking you to put your credit card? Could you get into a little bit more about, you know, this whole technology and, you know, how do you know what apps or what companies to trust and what not to trust?
Well, you don't, but this is why I do everything with a credit card. So I like to shop online, but I know if I shop online and I don't get the product, the credit card company covers me. If I shop online and the product comes and it's broken and the merchant refuses to take it back, the credit card company covers me. So as long as I'm using a credit card, I don't get over paranoid because I know I have zero liability with my credit card. So this is why.
What about online banking?
I don't do any online banking. There's, you know, in every type of technology, there's a risk. There is no foolproof system. I remind people, if you think you have a foolproof system, you have failed to take into consideration the creativity of fools. So there is no foolproof system. So you have to realize that every system has a flaw. So you just basically, real question is who has the liability? So in online banking on bill pay, the bank has the liability. So I don't have a problem with bill pay online. So it's always a question of, do I have any liability if I do this? And if I do, I want to make sure my risks are very minimal, but there will always be risks.
Thank you so much, Frank.
Frank, Janine again. Gina B would like to know, what about our phones being used as a wallet?
I'm very scared about all the information we put on our phones because the phones work off a wireless system, and wireless systems obviously can easily be hacked into and information can be obtained. So I don't do a lot on my phone that would be considered financial or doing transactions on my phone or keeping a lot of personal security information on my phone. I'm just a little bit more careful about that on a wireless type system.
Great. Anybody else as we begin to wind down? Chris Ulrich. Go ahead, Chris. Chris.
Frank,
Frank,
pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
A question for you. In all your work, you know, I'm curious as you've investigated whether it's corporate clients or clients for the government, or is there kind of a general profile of the type of person that you come across, like behaviors that you see, regardless whether it's political or corporate, or, you know, are there keys to you that tell you that this could be the person, et cetera, through your investigations?
You know, what really worries me is that after 40 years, and this may sound simplistic, but we're living now in a society where there's a tremendous lack of ethics and character. We don't teach ethics at home. We don't teach ethics in school because the teacher would be accused of teaching morality. We don't teach ethics in college. I had 3 sons go to college. The only one that went to law school had a course on ethics. And in most companies might have a code of ethics in their annual report, but they don't instill that in their employees. So what's happened now over the years is we've raised a group of people that really have a lack of character and ethics. So as long as it can benefit them and they think they can possibly get away with it, they're more apt to do it. So people are a lot more involved in crime today that you wouldn't think about being involved in crime, simply when it comes right down to it, as a lack of character and ethics. And we'll never really put a dent in white collar crime until we come to realize that and bring ethics back into the home, ethics back into the school, ethics back into college, and of course, ethics back into work. We have to instill that in people. Otherwise, we're just causing ourselves harm if you don't instill those things in human beings.
Thank you.
Janine, again, what are your thoughts on the do not call list? Because I'm on that do not call list and people still call me constantly and text me. What should we do in those situations?
Yeah, that doesn't work. You know, just like robocalls, you know, now we're starting to see where you can identify the robocall. It will tell you that this is a scam caller sometimes and identify it. They've come a long way in the last year with trying to eliminate robocalls. They'll never eliminate the fraudulent robocalls, but they can put a dent in them. But, you know, criminals just switch tactics. So once they start controlling these robocalls, they've now moved to robotext. So they're texting you and getting information from you or asking you to respond to a text with a yes or no or information. So they just find another stream, another means to do it. Even every time you close the door, they open another door. That's very true.
Oh, it's so irritating to me. Rachel Voss out of New York City. Rachel, Frank, Rachel.
Hi,
Frank. I'm so excited to be speaking to you. I have definitely learned a lot about you through the years. I wanted to ask you what you thought the top 2 to 3 motivations were for somebody to be a scam artist, and how, in your particular situation and generally, do you feel like those motivations get redirected into something good and productive versus bad and destructive?
You can, and you know, people sometimes, in my case, it started out as survival. How am I going to survive? Then people started chasing me, and then it was how am I going to stay away from the people chasing me? And I got caught up doing all those things at a very young age. But I remind people all the time, you can change if you want to, but you have to want to change. It has to be you that wants to change. And we live in a great country. Obviously, I hope that people understand I'm living proof that you can do the things I've done and then turn around and do something so positive with your life and go so far in your life. I can do it, anybody can do it, but you have to want to do it. It's not easy. It's a very difficult thing to turn your life around and to get people to accept you. I mean, I'm sure there are still people out there who don't accept me, who look at me in a negative way. Those things you can never change. All you can do is go on and do the right thing and do the best thing to use those things in the right way in your life. And you live in a great country where you have the opportunity to do that.
What made you want to do it?
As Janine said, I would be lying if I said to you, yeah, I was sitting in prison and said, yeah, when I get out, I'll never do this again. Or I've been totally rehabilitated. I've been reformed. That was not the case. When I got the offer to come out of prison, I wasn't sure that I wouldn't go back to prison again. I wasn't sure that I wouldn't do something again. But I ended up, getting involved with the FBI. I found them to be the most incredible group of people that had such tremendous ethics and credibility and love of country and love of family. And when you're surrounded by those people, that kind of rubs off on you. You start to say, wow, these people are incredible. And you start to realize I'd like to be that way. And then I met my wife and on an undercover assignment. I eventually had to tell her who I really was. I explained to her I didn't have a dime to my name. And eventually I asked her to marry me. And against the wishes of her parents, she did. You know, she saw something in me and she believed in me. She trusted me. And then I became a husband and took the responsibility of having a wife. And then I brought a child into the world and realized that I was a father and I had a tremendous responsibility to that child. And I think fatherhood and marriage is what really, in the end, truly changed my life and turned my life around.
All right, anyone else? The question here, Frank, is coming in. Thoughts on PayPal versus Venmo? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't have any problem with those as long as you're not backing it with a debit card. If I were to use one of those, I'd back that with a credit card. So I remove any liability.
And what are millennials falling for? What scams do you see the millennials going for?
The biggest one.
Millennials are asking me here.
Yeah, the biggest scam they fall for, the one most popular, is where they're on their computer and something pops up, says you have malware on your computer, contact this number or click here, and then they tell you we can fix that. There's a fee associated, or we need to take over your computer. That's the one they fall for the most.
I fell for that a couple years ago. I say I'm the grandmother of the millennials. I'm 49, so like I think I created the millennial culture. They followed my lifestyle. I don't want to take up more of your time. A couple of last questions here before we say goodbye to Frank, who's graciously given us an extra 9 minutes here. Anyone want to pop in? I see. Go ahead, Kelly Simpson up there, sister.
Yes, I had a question. I, like you, never use a debit card. And so that was encouraging to hear you say, you know, credit, we don't have liability when it comes to using credit cards. But when you mentioned about the phones, how do you feel about like the American Express app on your phone? Not concerned because it's backed up by a credit card?
Backed by American Express and backed by a credit card, so I'd have no concern with that at all.
Now, I would also wonder, are millennials falling for basically online banking?
They fall for a lot of scams because they're just anxious without stopping to think about, is this real, not real? So, you know, millennials are just like seniors, only they don't have as much money as seniors, so they don't lose as much money, but they fall for just about as many scams, whether they're romance scams or things of that nature. So this is why I say that anybody can be scammed. It doesn't matter who you are, how intelligent you are, you can be scammed. And that's why you have to just educate yourself and be a little smarter and a little wiser. I also mentioned to you that, you know, I've been a big campaign person about no passwords. You know, passwords are for tree houses. And you know, passwords are invented in 1974 when I was 16 years old. And I'm 72 and we're still using passwords. So we really need to get away from the use of passwords. They're 85% of all the malware, ransomware, breaches are occurred because of passwords. So you're starting to see new technologies come out where you're eliminating the password. So you might have seen Serena Williams going through the market in an ad, and she was checking her phone, and she only had her phone with her, and she saw a bracelet she wanted to buy. So she walked over to a Chase ATM, she pressed her bank app, and she got her money. No password, no card. That type of technology, called Trusona for Trupasana, Trusona, is starting to take over now and around the world, where we're starting to see the elimination of passwords. And I predict in the next 2 to 3 years at the max, we'll gotten away from passwords. And we're long past the reasons to be doing that. And so I'm glad to see that we're moving in that direction, and we need to move there quickly.
Everyone wants to know how you passed the bar exam, and I think I know the answer because you have that amazing memory, but maybe I'm wrong.
I had a photographic memory. At the time, Louisiana did not require a law degree to take the bar. Louisiana practices their law under the Napoleonic Criminal Code of Procedure, which is different than the other states. So even I had been a college graduate in law from Illinois and gone to Louisiana, I would have had to study for the bar. So I took the 2-month prep course that all law students take to prepare themselves for their state bar, and basically took the bar.
And you were legit a lawyer, yes?
Basically.
Because you didn't scam it, you really took the test.
No, I basically did it, yes.
Did you ever do a case? Did you ever represent someone?
Only civil. I was involved only in civil cases as the aide to the prosecutor during that time. But I didn't. That's all I did. Again, I was always smart enough to know that you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. So I always knew you're not going to get away being a lawyer forever. You're not going to get away being a doctor forever or an airline pilot forever. It was just a means to an end, and you had to move on.
And you said you were a graduate of Harvard, and a Harvard grad guy got
Start
suspicious
asking
and
you
started.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when you lived at it, when you live as a con artist, it is very difficult because first of all, you have to get along with everybody. Because the minute you get along, you get someone who doesn't like you or for whatever reason, then they start looking for negative things about you, and they start becoming suspicious of you. So you live a chameleon existence, but it's extremely difficult to do, and that's why you can't do it for a long, long time.
I read once, and I don't know if this is true or not. Did when you were in the jump seat on an airplane, did a pilot ever give you the controls? I read a quote that said one time you were given the controls, you put it on autopilot because you can't even fly a kite. Did you?
That's a little exaggerated. What it was BOAC, which is now British Airways. I was on a flight overseas to London. It was about 38,000 feet, and you have the captain, the co-pilot, and back then you had a flight engineer, all qualified pilots. And the captain got up to go back and get coffee, and he asked me, I was in the jump seat, which is behind the captain. He asked me to take his seat. So I took the seat, strapped myself in, but I didn't touch anything. It was automatic. It was on autopilot anyway. But I was prepared had the co-pilot said, you know what, since you're in the seat, I'm going to go back and get a cup of coffee too. I'd have said, hey, I got to tell you the story about this 16-year-old kid that got a uniform started. But I would have confessed everything.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. I love you. You're such a great storyteller. You have such a great presence and a true gift. I know a lot of questions are coming in. Marge is, my husband and I were victims of a mortgage scam. We were fortunate and got our money back, but it was incredibly scary. My stepfather recently reached out to Facebook Messenger. They hacked his brother's account and messaged their step-up. My mom made my stepfather call his brother to verify that he sent the message, and he didn't. It's really
There's so many
scary.
scams out there. One of the most popular one when I was writing that book, and still the most popular today, is called the grandparent scam. And basically that's where they call and the caller ID says police department. So they pick it up and they say, hi, this is Sergeant Riley. We arrested your grandson. He was DWI. And they give him all the information. He was driving this car. He had a passenger. Her name was, and you know that's the girlfriend. You know that's his car. And they say he needs to post bail or he'll have to spend the weekend in jail. He asked us not to call his parents. He asked us to call you. Are you willing to post his bail? Oh, yeah, absolutely. How much and how do I do that? You can give me a credit card over the phone. We'll post his bail and he'll be released. So I always tell people when you get that call, you need to hang up, look up the police department's phone number, call the police department or call to find out where your grandson is, but do not fall for that scam. And it's amazing how many hundreds of thousands of seniors fall for that scam every day called the grandparent scam.
Oh my gosh, I could see people falling for that. If you could go back in time, Diana wants to know, would you do it all over again?
No, because it was, you know, the movies and everything make it sound like an exciting life. It was a very, very lonely life, especially for a young boy. It was a very scary time. You have people chasing you all the time. You could never get involved with anybody or have a relationship with anybody. You're just constantly moving. It was a very lonely life. And even if I knew where it brought me today and all the success it brought me today, I would never want to go back and have to do that over again. And I would never want to wish that on anyone in that kind of life.
I watched the talk that you gave, that TED-like talk to Google. And I'm like crybaby central. And I was very emotional to hear you say that when your sons were younger, that you would get up in the middle of the night and they would ask your wife, why does dad get up in the middle of the night and sits in the living room, but he never turns on the TV? And that you would sit there and just relive and be full of such shame.
Absolutely. And that was a great thing. Google brought me to their corporate headquarters for Cyber Awareness Month, and they wanted me to speak to their security and privacy team. And they said, before you start answering questions for us, can you talk about your life? And after I spent about an hour there, did the talk about my life for 30 minutes and then Q&A for 30 minutes. They asked, because they own YouTube, if they could put it up on YouTube, and that's had about 7 million hits on YouTube. So it's just Frank Abagnale Google Talks. but that's where I talk about my life, what I did and where it brought me and why I changed everything else.
I've watched it 2 times, 2 already. It's amazing. I really sincerely cannot thank you enough. I mean, the questions will never end. You know, you seem to have incredible drive. How much anxiety did you suffer before you got caught? You just answered that question. Someone else, Diana, says, you're awesome. A friend of mine, Bill, wants to know the #1 book you'd recommend for people. What's your book? What's your go-to book?
I do really like, you know, I've written most of my other books, Art of the Steal, Stealing Your Life, either dealt with identity theft or corporate fraud and check forgeries and things like that. I do think Scam Me If You Can, and again, I have no royalties, no advance for that book. It's ARP's book. They receive the royalties and advances. But I think it is a great book for everyone of every age, especially if you have parents, grandparents, to give them as a gift, because it's a very simple, easy to read book. It covers every scam. It has a little test after each one to make sure you remembered what you were told about that scam. So it is a great book, and that's the one book I would recommend that everyone should read, no matter how old they are.
I'm going to make my kids read it. My 3 sons, so you and I have that in common.
My wife calling me for dinner, so I got to go. But I want to thank everybody. It's been a pleasure being on with you. You all, please stay safe and stay well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Bye.
Frank Abagnale Jr. Thanks for your service. Have a great dinner.
Thank you.
Time as well.
Thank you.
Bye. Everyone say goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Frank.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Hello. How amazing was that? 50 minutes. Oh my gosh. And that was such a great gift. Thank you to Frank Abagnale for, first of all, if you ever told me, you know, I really feel like this before I bring my buddy Frank Marsh in. We can find the good in this COVID-19. You know, it's crazy stuff happening. My college roommate, Dodo, just said to me yesterday, she goes, you want to know one of the blessings of COVID-19? Her daughter's working from school, right? She's 14, her daughter, Olivia. She goes, I don't have to worry about school shootings because my daughter's in my house. That I always worry about that when she goes off. Like, is this cool? And she said every day she wakes up and says, okay, how is COVID-19 really a blessing? I would have never in a million years even reached out to Frank Abagnale Jr. in a million years. But because of COVID-19, because all my speaking engagements are canceled, I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next year. That I have to reinvent my own life. I'm up till 3:30 in the morning writing a workbook for you guys. Like, I have to reinvent it. Then I'm thinking to myself, if I'm home trapped and reinventing my life, maybe some of the people I admire are trapped too. And maybe instead of them traveling internationally and getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to speak, maybe they'll say yes to 30 minutes. Maybe they'll say yes, and maybe they'll say no. My mother always said, you never know unless you ask. So ask. And then my mother would then say, no is the beginning of negotiation. Great, Thursday night won't work for you, how's Friday? So what a true blessing that Frank Abagnale Jr. was here and shared such great information. By the way, I watched everything I can find on him. I read this book, and he gave us information I did not hear online. Your questions were awesome. You did great. Thank you so much. I'd love to dive right in to my buddy, Frank Marsh, who's been patiently waiting. Frank and I don't even know how we met years ago. So maybe you'll remember Frank. Frank Marsh and I met years ago, and he changed my life. I love training. I love speaking. And very rarely do I meet another speaker where I'm just sitting on the edge of my seat. And for sure, Chris Ulrich here is on the phone, on the line. He's one of those speakers. My buddy, Elise Lavich, she's one of those speakers. If you hear her keynote, you'll be riveted at the edge of your seat. She's so dynamic. And Frank Marsh. So Frank Marsh has worked for the FBI for several years. He has an unbelievable legacy. He's a military guy. He has been all over planet Earth. He's been blown up, and he's had fought for his life more than one time. He is with us as a true blessing. Frank and I lost touch a couple of years ago. His mom passed around the same time my mom passed. And Frank Marsh taught me a little bit about handwriting analysis. And my mother was in the class. You know, she's since been passed for 6 years. And when my mother went up to Frank, she goes, you know, my name's Lorraine Driver. And recently, when I start writing my name, I'm forgetting some letters. Like I'll do one R instead of two for Lorraine, or I write diver instead of driver. And what could that be? And Frank's like, oh, interesting. You're probably just tired or stressed. Meanwhile, she had cancer and we didn't know. Frank pulled me aside and said, I'm concerned. This is a big deal that your mother's dropping letters. And not only that, she had like mysterious like marks that were not a period. It was like just a squiggle or a line. And he said that could indicate up high on the writing, that could indicate something in her brain. So I didn't tell my mother for a while. And then eventually what happens is she gets cancer. She's fighting breast cancer. I get a call, I'm at an event. My sisters call me, Carrie and Kayleen, and say, wherever you are, you have to hop on a plane. Mom has brain aneurysms. She had one that exploded. She had two others in her head. My mother was born with something called an AVM in her brain. And I think I talked about this before. And Frank Marsh saw it in the handwriting. There's something, my mother was born with this AVM. So when the blood rushed from the artery into the capillaries to slow it down and then into the veins, my mother didn't have that. So it went straight at 100 miles an hour through the artery, bypassed the capillaries into the veins. By the way, I know I repeat my information sometimes. Thanks for being patient. I am speaking about 4 webinars a week, so sometimes the stories might re-loop, and it takes 7 times to learn something and retain it anyway. So look at it through a new lens. Some people have been reprimanding me, like, you already talked about that. Okay, so great. I'll talk about it 7 times so you'll master it. All right, without me talking anymore, I'd love to introduce my buddy who works at the FBI, Frank Marsh, who used to teach for me. He is riveting. Him and I were on a History Channel documentary. If you've been to our website and the VIP channel, you saw that clip. I recommended him for that documentary because he's the type of guy that pulls you right out of your seat. Maybe he'll talk about, are you a sheep or are you a wolf? Hopefully he will, and what inspired him. I see him in the middle of my screen without further ado. And Frank, you can also share your screen, buddy, when you're ready. We did a run through yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. My buddy, Frank Marsh.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Give Frank some love. Turn your mics on real quick. We'll give Frank some love. Thanks for sticking around a little extra for us. All right.
Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you, Conley. I've been in the law enforcement and intelligence world and the training world for over 30 years now. And the one thing that I've learned, you think I would have learned more, but the one thing that I learned is that the brain can only absorb what the butt can endure. And as you've been sitting here, your butts have been going numb. So I know that your brains have been going numb. And that's usually my cue that I need to pump up the volume, dance, dance. That I need to increase the entertainment factor if I have any hopes of keeping the educational factor high. So if you see me flailing around here, I'm not having a stroke. I'm just doing what I can to try and keep you guys awake and attentive. It's fair enough?
Great.
All right, so I'm going to be covering some ground here. And let me see if I can do this. So share screen, let's go to this. So bear with me as I make this happen. Okay.
This is where get your piece of paper and your pencil or your pen out, blue pen. The workbook's still being edited. My designer's been working around the clock. It's numerous pages, so it'll be worth the wait. So you'll just have to use a plain piece of paper and take your mind map. That for our special guest, you're more than welcome to stay with Frank Marsh as well. And Frank, I think, said he's going to give us a copy of this presentation so we can give us notes to you as well, which is really a real gift. So
all right, can you see the slide that I have up now? Is that showing? Okay, good. So I just want to make sure I'm doing it right. All right, what I'd like to start off with right now is if you all have a piece of paper and a pen, I would like you all to imagine that it's late at night and you just broke into a house and you're there to kidnap something. I don't care what you kidnap. I don't care what you demand, but I'm only going to give you 2 minutes to write for me a ransom note. Begin. Kidnap their kid, kidnap their chia pet. Demand $1 billion, demand 1 billion Twinkies. I don't care, but you have only 1 minute and 55 seconds to write for me a ransom note. Go. One minute. Better hurry. The people are coming home. The lights came on in the house. People are there. You better hurry. "30 seconds. "10, 5, 2, 1. You're done. You're done. All right, go ahead and set those ransom notes aside. And let's talk about detecting deception and danger. And what I'm going to share with you is you cannot detect deception or danger without having a foundation built upon behavioral analysis and critical thinking. And I'm going to show you why this is so important. Quick background about myself, as Janine was mentioning, I was a Marine Corps intelligence officer with operations during Desert Storm and rescue missions into Mogadishu, Somalia. I was a DEA intelligence analyst assigned to the El Paso Intelligence Center. I was head of training for the National Drug Intelligence Center, and I've been an instructor at the FBI Academy for both their basic and advanced units, as well as for the National Academy and the Behavioral Science Unit. Wow. Here are some of the classes that I teach and have taught. To just give you a quick overview, let you take a second and look at those. Just a few of them. And
can I ask you a question? Did you work with the crew from Mindhunter? Are you know what I mean? You were in that behavioral intelligence unit. Were you involved with that group?
No, I wasn't. The behavioral science unit, which is quite exciting thing that I got to do, was actually located in the basement of the FBI Academy, which was at one time J. Edgar Hoover's bomb shelter. It built it to be a bomb shelter. And when the behavioral science unit started, many of the agents back then were, and much of the management was, it's about catching bank robbers. It's about, catching bad guys. What is this psychology stuff? And what, profiling? What is all this voodoo? So behavioral science unit didn't have a good backing from FBI management to start. And then slowly but slowly, people started catching on and seeing some relevance and need for this kind of stuff. I'm fortunate that I got to work with one of the originals in the behavioral science profiling. His name was Dr. James T. Reese. One of my favorite stories about Dr. Reese, who was one of the original profilers along with Ressler and others, was he was interviewing one of the serial killers. And as Dr. James T. Reese was leaving, the serial killer said, "Hey, Jim, you got a young daughter, don't you?" And the serial killer had been targeting young women. And that was a little jibe that he was sending to Dr. Reese of, your daughter could be one of my victims. Dr. Reese apparently slammed his hand against the door so hard. And Dr. Reese realized at that moment that being in this world, dealing with psychopaths, walking through the darkness and the mud takes its toll on you. And it was beginning to take its toll on him. And that's why he started the FBI stress program. Because what we were seeing was so many agents and so many in law enforcement who go after criminals, who study the ways of darkness, were dropping dead from heart attacks, were suffering from incredible stress and post-traumatic stress. So he was really the founder of the stress program, and he's been one of my heroes. So hopefully that answers your question. I was not involved with the Mindhunter people who created the program.
There's a show on Netflix called Mindhunter about that department. So I was curious if you knew any of the people that were portrayed on that show.
Right. I was fortunate enough to have worked for them for over 3 years, and in the spaces that they depict. So I've watched that program to see how much they got right, and it was pretty scary how much of the stuff they got right. So we're going to talk now about detecting danger and deception. I've got a quick little cheat sheet here for you. And why I share this with you is if you want to be able to detect deception, which is the precursor to being able to detect violence, I need to build up in you critical thinking skills and principles. And we're going to be talking about these things with the idea of getting to detecting deception. But being a critical thinker is not enough. You've got to understand some things about behavioral analysis and some of these principles. Now, I understand we don't have all the time in the world. I'm going to try and cover what I can. So we will be obviously skipping some stuff out unless Janine thinks it's worth having me back, and I'd be happy to share some of the things that we don't get a chance to cover. And finally, detecting deception principles. There's all kinds that we can cover, but I need to build the foundation with critical thinking. And I'll show you why we need to start talking about critical thinking. Did you know that in June 30th, 2017, NASA had to officially deny that we have a child sex colony on the planet Mars? Now, I want you to think about that for a second. Why in the world would an official government agency have to make an official announcement that we do not have a child sex slave colony on the planet Mars? And the reason is because these two individuals, Alex Jones from InfoWars and Robert Steele, said that we do. And so many people complained to NASA. They sent emails, they sent letters, and they said, you shouldn't be kidnapping children and sending them to the planet Mars so that powerful people can have sex with them. That NASA felt compelled to have to actually deny this. What does that tell you about the level of critical thinking in America when an official government agency has to do this? It's pretty scary. And it's scary because I'd like you to understand these two concepts here. The level of ignorance and conscientious stupidity is mind-boggling when you see what people will absorb from the internet and from the news. And so really the most fundamental attack on freedom is the attack on critical thinking skills. And something that scares me even more was a Texas political party in 2012 decided that they wanted to ban critical thinking because they didn't want children questioning teachers or those in authority. If that doesn't scare you, I don't know what does. That they don't want people asking questions. And I'm going to show you why the power of questions is so important. But let's talk about what in the world is thinking. If we're going to talk about critical thinking, let's talk about thinking. And thinking is quite simply to consider or reason about something. It can be about anything. Thinking is an action that requires the person to form a thought, and any thought will do. In fact, you don't even need facts or evidence to be thinking. I'm thinking right now about Jennifer Lopez or Shakira. But is that critical thinking? No. So then what is critical thinking? And it depends on who you ask. There are over 7 major fields that study critical thinking with over 118 different definitions. Now take that into consideration. What does it tell you that 7 different major fields cannot agree on a single definition? If we can't agree on what it is, what hope do we have of being able to teach it, evaluate it, or research it? So since I couldn't find any consensus, I wanted to find out, what do the great thinkers do? And what I found that great thinkers do is Socrates came up with the Socratic method of questioning. And what he found was, if he asks enough questions, he could change what you think you know to be true. He was so good at this, in fact, he was forced to take poison because those in power accused him of corrupting the youth of Athens. And how was he corrupting the youth of Athens? He taught them to think in questions. Next person I looked up, Rene Descartes, said the only way to find the truth is to question everything. Newton had a habit of consistent and relentless questioning. Darwin, goal to constantly question. Einstein, extremely inquisitive. So what do all these great thinkers have in common? They had a habit of systematic inquiry. In other words, they systematically asked questions. They didn't just ask a question here or there like a spasmodic ADHD child. What's that? Who's this? Where are you going? What's that made of? They attacked a problem or a situation by systematically asking questions about that problem. So that is what I've come to find, that critical thinking is learning to think in questions. So let's take a look at why this might be so important. The power of questions. The art and science of asking questions is the source of all knowledge. Intelligence investigations are driven by questions. And in fact, an uncreative mind can spot wrong answers, but it takes a creative mind to spot the wrong questions. In many investigations that I've worked on, I found that the agents and analysts and investigators were asking the wrong question. One of my favorite examples, do this with you, see if I can bring this up. Bring me back. No, I don't do that. One of my favorite examples is a case where a 4-year-old girl disappeared. And as the police responded so quickly, they felt that they had blocked off the neighborhood well enough that they were able to ascertain that the young girl was probably still in the neighborhood. So they were going to go knock on doors and they were going to ask, have you seen this little girl? But they realized, or can we search your house? Most people would say, what? Can we search your house? Most people would say, no, get away from me. So this police officer stopped all the other officers and said, we need to think about the question that we're going to ask. And they took about 5-10 minutes to come up with the perfect question. And so they went and knocked on doors, and the first question that they asked was, is there anything you wouldn't do to help save the life of a 4-year-old little girl? Everyone said, yes, absolutely, I would do anything. Great. The second question then was, can we search your house? Do you see the beauty of that question? Was rather than just asking, can we search your house, or little girl's missing, can we search your house? Most people would reflexively answer no, or I'm not comfortable with this. But by getting them to commit to yes to the first one, it made it so much harder to say no to the second question. And in fact, every single house said yes, but one. And where do you think that little girl was found? In the house of the person who said no. So give you another example of the power of questions. In 1986, El Al flight from London to Tel Aviv, Anne-Marie Murphy, an Irish female pregnant, was traveling alone, but she showed no signs of nervousness, no signs of deception. However, by asking questions, they determined her story didn't make sense. What if her story didn't make sense? What they found is she was traveling alone and there was no one meeting her. And a pregnant woman can travel by herself, absolutely. But no one with her and no one going to meet her, they just thought was odd. It was an anomaly. They just put it in the anomaly box. Not only that, she didn't have enough money for a 2-week stay and she had no hotel reservation. That's odd, but people can travel sometimes and not have enough money. So they put those two odd things together. And the last one was, she said she was going to be staying at the Hilton in Bethlehem, and there was no Hilton in Bethlehem. So even though her bag had already been screened, the El Al security guard said, check her bag again. When they checked her bag again, they found 1.5 kilograms of Semtex, an explosive most baggage examiners didn't even know existed at that time. Now, here's the reason why she showed no signs of nervousness or deception, was she didn't know those explosives were in her bag. Her Syrian boyfriend had put it in her bag. So can you see, by asking questions, not by x-rays, not by incredible billions of dollars spent on technology, but simply by asking questions, they were able to avert a disaster. Power of questions in the O.J. Simpson case. The O.J. Simpson case, for those of you old enough to remember, the prosecution presented evidence that blood from the murder scene, when analyzed, could be matched to O.J. Simpson, and it was shared only in 1 in 400 people. Well, the defense rightly argued that you could fill a football stadium with the amount of people who share that same blood type. So the prosecution dropped the evidence. Well, I say, let's take the defense up on their argument and let's fill a football stadium with the amount of people who match that blood type, and let's ask some questions. Out of all the people in this football stadium that matched this blood type, how many of them knew Nicole? Did some people just leave my stadium? Out of all these people in this football stadium that matched this blood type, knew Nicole, how many of them knew where she'd be that night? How many of them had been violent towards her before? How many of them wanted her dead? So can you see, by asking questions, I can cut through all the chaff, all the noise that they're putting up there, and be able to clearly and precisely see evidence for what it is. So what happens when we don't ask questions? Emergency room nurses in this one experiment were told by someone on a telephone that they needed to give this much medication to this patient in the emergency room. And even though the nurses knew that the amount of medicine the doctor was saying that the nurse needed to give was a lethal dose, over 95% of the nurses went and got the medicine and were ready to do it. What didn't any of them do? None of them asked questions. A gun shop called the Harris home. For those of you who don't remember, Eric Harris was one of the Columbine shooters. And a gun shop before the massacre called the home and told Mr. Harris, hey, the gun clips you ordered were in. Mr. Harris said he didn't order any gun clips and hung up the phone. Mr. Harris never asked any questions. And in a video that they found after the shooting, Eric Harris said, had my father asked us about those gun clips, we would never be able to pull off what we're about to pull off. Or how about people who want to learn to fly, but they're not interested in learning to land? Do you think that's something we should ask? What happens when we ask the wrong question? Give you an example. For years, we kept asking, where in the world is Osama bin Laden? Where in the world is Osama bin Laden? As long as we asked that question, we couldn't find him. It wasn't until we changed the question to who is helping him that we started focusing in on the couriers who were bringing information to Osama bin Laden, that we found him and we killed him. Questions help us to identify anomalies in data and actions. And why this is so important is, what does it tell you when a kidnapper breaks into a home but leaves the victim? Do you know if a kidnapper tries to kidnap someone and they kill them in the process, most kidnappers will still take the body? Why? Because they still want to get paid. How about a bank robber who breaks into a bank and when he's on the phone with the police makes no demands? How about an FBI agent who walks into a prison cell and the prisoner immediately smiles? Do you know most prisoners don't smile when they see an FBI agent walk into a cell? Why? Because they're afraid of being labeled a rat, that they're cooperating with the FBI. So the FBI agent in this case said, search him. The corrections officer said, I already searched him. FBI agent says, search him again. Corrections officers reluctantly did it and found a 6-inch blade in the man's pants. And when the correction officer asked him, what were you going to do with this? The prisoner looked at the FBI agent and smiled. Or how about in Russia, Beslan, the school there, where terrorists took over the school and the Russian military and police were waiting for the terrorists to make demands and they made no demands. These are all anomalies in data and actions that need to be questioned. And unfortunately, in most of them, people didn't ask the questions that need to be asked. What happens when we ask a question and we don't listen? Give you an example. Here's the 911 call. Does he have any weapons or anything? This is a simple bipolar question. It means there can be 2 possible answers, or actually 3. Yes, no, and I don't know. Let's look at this woman's answer. Yes, they're all legal. The question wasn't, are they legal or unlegal, just does he have any? But the mother felt the need to add the fact that they're legal. 911, okay, but he's not threatening you with anything. This is a horrible question from the 911 operator. But let's look at the mother's response. Does the mother answer the question? No. So he was threatening the mother. There was threat involved. And when the 911 operator typed into her computer to the police, the 911 operator typed no weapons. As 3 Pittsburgh police officers walked up to the door, they were gunned down by this woman's son. When you learn to listen with precision, when you learn to observe with precision, you will see things and you will hear things most people miss. So question everything. Why? One of the first things you need to understand is that all thinking, all data, and even questions are flawed. All problems are ill-defined. We all speak a different language. A single piece of evidence can have multiple interpretations, and it is the only way to detect deception. So we all speak a different language. Socrates says, wisdom begins with the definition of terms. So I would like you all to close your eyes. Go ahead, I'll wait. Close them. I would like you to think about the last time you ate an apple. Look at that apple. Touch that apple. Smell that apple. Taste that apple. If I was to ask you to give me one word to describe that apple experience, you would tell me your apple was what? Anyone?
Sweet.
Sweet.
Juicy.
Juice. Any others?
Tart. and
Tart.
Crisp.
Okay, great, thank you. Did any of you think of the word pain when you thought of the word apple? Okay, why would I think of the word pain other than having a demented childhood? Well, I grew up on a block that had over 72 kids on my block. And next to my block was an apple orchard. That's right, I saw someone throw. Every day I had to survive an apple ambush. It was like Lord of the Flies in my neighborhood, as tribes of kids were getting sticks, and you'd sharpen the stick on the sidewalk and put an apple on the end of it because you can throw it much harder with a stick than you can with your arm. So as strange as that may sound, in my linguistic code, next to the word apple, I have the word pain. Each and every single person has a different definition for every word. So if you were to ask a pedophile, did you have sex with that child? Many pedophiles will say, I would never harm that child. I didn't ask you if you would harm it. I asked, did you have sex with that child? And many pedophiles will say, I would never harm that child, because pedophiles do not consider having sex with a child harming it.
Frank.
Yes, question.
Janine. And feel free to type in questions. I'll read them. Frank has asked me to scan the comments section so he can continue to teach, and I'll read your comments if you have questions as we go. I want to remind you, I told you a story when we used to teach together at the Body Language Institute that my mom said to my sister, Carrie, my middle sister, when she was like 14 or 15, they were at the Burlington Mall in Massachusetts. And my mom said to Carrie, I'll meet you outside of Sears when the mall closes at 6 o'clock. It was on a Sunday night, it was raining and dark. And so at 6 o'clock, Carrie went outside of Sears, 14, 15 years old. Now the mall is closed and my mother is nowhere to be found. Carrie's playing this game. Who looks strong enough to throw me in the trunk of their car? She's like a nervous wreck. Meanwhile, where's my mother? Do you remember?
No, I don't.
She was outside of Sears, inside the mall. And so my mother's panicked, not finding my sister Carrie because Carrie's missing, but Carrie went outside of Sears. And when you talk about the power of questions and the power of words, I love how you just said every word has like a different meaning. And I immediately transported back to that story with my mom and my sister back in the day. But my sister was outside the mall, outside of Sears. And my mother was outside of Sears, but inside the mall. Be very specific.
Absolutely. I see that in investigations and I see that in relationships. Give you an example. If you say, I love you to your spouse, do you know your definition of the word love is not the same as your spouse's? So until you sit down with your spouse and say, okay, when you say you love me, what does it mean to you? Because I will guarantee that they have a different definition and you need to push them. Well, when I love you, it means I care about you. Great. I care about global warming. Give me something more than care. Well, when I say I love you, it means I think about you. Great. I think about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Give me something more than think and care. And so why this is so important is one of my coworkers, I told her to go home and do this with her fiance. And when she went home, she said to him, do you love me? He says, yes. She says, what do you mean by that? He says, I think about you and I care about you. She says, give me something more. And he stopped and he said, when you put your head on my shoulder, it feels like the world stops rotating and everything is the way it's supposed to be. And she started to cry, not because it was soapy or, romantic or emotional, but she suddenly realized that he was always trying to get her to put her head on his shoulder, or he was always trying to put his head on her shoulder. And she didn't realize that that was a part of his definition of love. She thought he was just trying to get physical and have some sex. So whether it's in a relationship or an investigation, you need to define each and every single word. But we don't all speak the same language. Give me an example, the word secure right there. If you were to tell members of the armed forces to secure this room, if you told members of the US Navy to secure this room, the Navy would turn out the lights, they would lock the door, and they'd go home. As far as the Navy is concerned, this room is secure. If you told the US Army to secure this room, they would post guards at every door or window and allow no one to enter or leave without proper authority. If you told US Marines to secure this room, they would assault it, destroy it in the process, and raise a flag over the rubble. As far as the Marines are concerned, this room is secure. If you told the US Air Force to secure this room, they'd rent it for 3 years with an option to buy. What is your definition of secure? So can you see why it is so important for us to understand that we don't all speak the same language? And it is the only way to detect deception is questioning everything. So let's take a look at this example here. This is from an actual case. They told her parents that I approached her on the school grounds. They said I gave her drugs and told her not to tell anyone. I didn't approach her. And this man is being truthful. But when you bring an accusation up, what we want to hear is also that you deny every accusation. So what are the 3 different accusations you see here? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller?
That he approached her, that he gave her drugs, and that he told her not to tell.
Excellent. Out of those three, my brain is not working. Accusations. What is the only one that he denies?
That he approached her.
Right. And in fact, he did admit to giving her drugs and telling her not to tell. So can you see the importance? But the initial officers that worked this case said, hey, he's denying doing anything. I'm like, no, let's look at what he is denying. So let's take a look at another one. What is the purpose of calling 911? I'll leave that to anyone. Why do we call 911?
For emergency.
Well, for an emergency, but do we just call up 911 and say, help, and hang up the phone?
To bring police officers to your location or emergency people?
Medical emergency.
Right, so what do we need to tell 911? Do we need an ambulance? Do we need fire? Do we need police? Where is the emergency? So we need to give a little bit more information. And if you say, come to this address, there's been a shooting, well, do you think in Las Vegas, had they called 911 and just simply said, come to this, this mall, there's been a shooting, well, that sending one ambulance would not have been enough in the Las Vegas shooting, would it? So we expect that when we call 911, that it's to ask for help. We're going to tell them what kind of help, where the help is needed, and for how many people or for who it's for. So let's take a look at this one. So let's take a look at this woman's 911 call. I just found I had my husband go make me some food downstairs. Does 911 operator care as to whether or not you had your husband go make you a sandwich?
No.
Do they care that he just got home?
No.
Do they care that you just heard a big bang?
No.
Where does this woman ask for help for her husband?
Nowhere.
She doesn't. And in fact, this is the woman, I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember, the short little actor by the name of Gary Coleman, who was on a TV show, and I forget the name of the TV show.
Different Strokes.
Different Strokes. Well, his is actually his ex-wife who had moved back into his condo without his approval. And she was laying in bed all day. And when he got home, the first thing out of her mouth was, go make me a sandwich. What do you think may have been the first thing out of his mouth? Now, he's working as a security guard because his parents had spent all his money. So he had to get a job. And he's working all day. He comes home. And the first thing out of the mouth of a woman who's in his house, who he didn't want in his house, says, go make me a sandwich.
F you, get out.
Go make your own damn sandwich. So can you see, if you question what is the purpose of a 911 call, the purpose here is not to get him help. What is the purpose here? This is an alibi in the making. Is there any doubt in your mind she killed him? She was never charged with his murder. How about this 911 call?
Making of an alibi.
Does 911 care that you've been at a basketball game?
No.
And even though he's saying, say again, whoever spoke?
I was going to say, not unless it's some kind of like alibi, like.
This is story making, and this is what we see. So by knowing the purpose as to why people call 911, you can question the purpose or the answer that you guess or that you see against the original purpose of what they're doing. So giving you another example, what is the purpose of making a statement to the police? So does a police officer walk up to someone and say, tell me who you're not, tell me what you didn't do, tell me what you don't know, and tell me what you didn't remember? No, they say, tell me who you are, tell me what you did, tell me what you remember. So let's take a look at this statement. Can you see where this person is doing what I call rule of the negative? Why are you telling me who you're not, what you didn't do, what you don't remember? Anytime I see someone putting in the rule of the negative, I know that this is a sensitive area, this is an anomaly in the behavior that I need to pay attention to. And in fact, this person had been stealing money for years. Let's take a look. Oh, someone have a question? And in red there on the bottom of your screen, hopefully you can see, we must always ask, what was the question that produced this statement? So, because you've got to compare when you're going to analyze what was the question that was asked to the answer that was given. So if I said to you, tell me everything you did from the time you woke up to the time you got here, and you started by telling me, well, at dinner time, I did this. My question was, what did you do from the time you woke up, not dinner time? So when we analyze, we've got to compare the question to the answer, okay? How about this? And this is the reason why I need you to question is because everything communicates something. Can a threat note tell us something about the author? Now, why would you, if you were to write a threatening note, what would you put in your threatening note?
Lame stuff.
Lame stuff. Say again?
A demand.
A demand, okay.
What you want.
In a threatening note, you're threatening the person.
I'm going to kill you.
Good. Who said that? That's our only violent person here?
Kelly Cole. I'm not violent. Oh, but he is.
I would also say that I would enjoy doing it so they know that you're looking forward to the action.
Okay, Beck, you're beginning to scare me.
I write these notes all the time, but they usually are to my kids, and it's about taking away their Netflix passcode.
Like, why do we want to threaten them?
Because they don't clean their rooms.
Well, absolutely. So the purpose of a threat note is to produce a threat.
Right?
Right. So let's take a look. And so what you expect to see in a threat note is threats. So let's take a look at this actual threat note. Can you see it okay?
Yes.
Yes.
It says, I see you, you will be with me. No one will have you but me. Your heart doesn't need influence around you. Without me, heaven where you are. Be without your love. Perfect death for you. The words written upside down are Anis or Anis Kai. Tomorrow I will remember your smile. Do you feel threatened? This is a woman, a woman found on her doorstep when she was out taking care of some things, came home, found this note, and she called the renter, the person who she was renting from, and said, hey, is this note for you? He says, I don't think so. You better take it to the police. And when she takes it to the police department, she gets a call while she's there. The house she was renting burned down. So let's take a look and ask some questions, starting with what is the purpose of a threat note? To produce a threat. So already you can see this note isn't really producing too much of a threat. So that means we need to start asking some questions. And some of the questions we need to ask are this. Some of the things I noticed were this. Watch this, if this works. Me, me, me. Is the threat note supposed to be about me who's making the threats or about you?
Be about you.
Right. So this person who's writing this threat note is including themselves over 3 times in the ransom note. And what I often find is people who have personality disorders, many times people suffering from depression, will overuse the pronoun me. So that's one of my first clues that I'm looking for in this author, is someone possibly suffering from personality disorders, mental health issues, or depression. Something else I see is the words like the word I see is pulling apart. The word but is pulling apart. Other words are pulling apart without, the word out is pulling apart. So this person could have wrote this note. Oh, I forgot, let me back up. The fact that this is cut out letters tells me there's a strong possibility this was written by a woman. Now, why do you think the fact that they're cut out letters tells me there's a strong possibility that this was written by a woman and not by a man?
Men generally don't do that kind of thing.
Men won't do that.
It's
Too much trouble.
There you go. It's too damn much work for most of the men. They're like, oh, just F it. I'm going to just go ahead and handwrite it or type it. So generally speaking, my first clue is the fact that it's cut out letters is my author who wrote this might be a woman. The fact that I'm seeing the overuse of pronoun me tells me that they're suffering from depression. The fact that the letters are pulling apart, this is someone who has something in their life that is pulling apart. The Denise Kai, that caught my attention. I didn't know what that was, so I looked it up. And I found some interesting things about Denise Kai that could possibly be. So let's take a look at what I found. When I questioned and looked at the victim who got this note, I found on her Facebook post, she readily admitted from suffering from depression and a recent breakup or a splitting apart. Remember I said that in the words, how they were pulling apart? The Denise Kai, or Denise K, walking on air, apparently there's this Australian music producer who wrote a song about not letting go of love. And the victim had numerous Facebook posts about lost love. The victim actually looked like the singer. The singer in the video had a 12-year-old boy in the video, and the woman had about a 12-year-old boy. So things are making you go, And the woman had recently lost her boyfriend because she had a same-sex affair. So can you see what, when you understand everything you do, how you walk, how you talk, how you sit, how you drive your car, what's inside your car? If I was to look inside your car, would I find every McDonald's and fast food wrapper all over your car, French fries or Cheerios from your children? Or is your car so pristine that you make people take off their shoes before they get in your car? Does your car have stickers all over the back? Does your car look like it's never been washed? So can you see that your car and what's in your car and what's outside your car and how you drive communicates volumes of information? Well, so do threat notes and ransom notes. So this is why I need you to understand how I find it amazing that even the Bible says, for out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And this is one of the things that we're finding is that research tells us that your words can tell us a lot about your psychological state. And why this is important is that as we begin to look at social media posts, we're beginning to be able to help narrow down the amount of people who might become violent and those who don't by their linguistic choice of words. So I need you to understand, as Ralph Waldo Emerson says, who you are screams so loud I cannot hear what you're saying. That who you are comes out in everything that you do. So let's take a look how even in our handwriting. I had such a wonderful time. Can anyone tell me what is catching their eye about this first sentence?
Break between A and wonderful.
There's an increase in space. And I believe Janine probably has already talked to you about distance, how if someone suddenly increases the amount of space between you, that's odd when they've seemed quite comfortable before. So
Wonderful is also written smaller than everything else.
yes, what else is happening to the word wonderful?
It's in the opposite direction.
Right. So I've got 3 indicators. I've got a change in space, a change in size, and a change in slant. 2 of the number 1 indicators that I look for deception in handwriting are a change in spacing and a change in slant. So can you see how chances are this person didn't have a wonderful time? How about the next one? I did not harm her. Now, harm got bigger, right? Bigger is better. Don't answer that. This is an overcompensation. Why is he overcompensating on the word harm? One of the things that I find about toxic people, toxic men in general, and toxic or con men is that they often overdo everything. They are too nice, too kind, too smart, too helpful, too knowledgeable, whatever it might be, they will overdo it. Many women who have told me that they've been in toxic, abusive relationships have told me, no man ever loved me the way this man did. He listened to every story I ever had to say. Ladies, I got to share with you. That should be your first clue, is a man who can listen to everything you have to say. Why? What is the number 1 complaint of women about most men?
Never listen to me.
What?
Never listen to me.
What?
You don't listen.
We are horrible at listening. So shouldn't it be a clue when you find a man who can listen to every word and as you've talked for an hour or 2 hours goes, oh no, please go on. Tell me more about your conversation that you had with your mother or your coworker 5 weeks ago. How about the next one? I did not kill her. Does anything jump out at you here?
Kill is underscored.
The smiley face.
Triple underscore.
Triple underscored. And what also do you see tripled?
Exclamation points.
In many of the psychopaths' handwriting that I've looked at, remember I told you how many toxic people will overdo everything. I will find an overabundance of punctuation or underlining. There's one other population that will also do this. Does anybody know what other population will underline and over punctuate?
Adolescent.
Under 16.
Teenage girls. But teenage girls, as they grow older, will stop doing this. What about the smiley face?
Repeat.
Isn't it kind of odd? I often find in handwriting of those suffering from depression will often put a smiley face. O.J. Simpson on his suicide note put a smiley face. My ex-wife who suffered from manic depression for years, in every letter she wrote me, put a smiley face. Now, if you put smiley faces in your text messages, it does not have the same meaning. A lot of you, collective sigh of relief. Because of the explosion of emoticons, it doesn't have the same meaning in text messages as it does in handwriting. But a smiley face in handwriting is putting on a brave face. It's like wearing a mask. And for this last one, Jen, Jeff, Jimmy, and who's that last one? My thing's covered. Jill. Who do you think's getting promoted? Who do you think's getting fired?
Jill's getting fired.
Jen's getting promoted.
How do you know that?
Jen is the largest name there.
We tend to put first what is most important to us, and we tend to make big what is important to us. We tend to put last what is least important to us, and we tend to make small what is least important to us. So these are some of the many principles that I need you to understand whether you're trying to be a critical thinker, analyze behavior, or detect deception. So let's take a look at this next one here. And Janine, if I'm going too long, please let me know and I can wrap it up at any time.
I'm loving it. So people, if they have to head out, I see other people saying thumbs up here. If people have to hang up, they can, and they can watch it on we have a VIP portal and they can watch it there tomorrow. So
okay.
Page. So thank you. Keep going. As long as you have the time for us, buddy, we can't thank you enough. I love you. You're awesome.
Well, you know, I live for this stuff. I'm a bit of a fanatic, so I can sometimes overdo it.
Well, Chris Elra keeps sending me text messages, who's a high investigator and loves tons of data and research. He's like, keep it coming. I love Frank Marsh.
Good, good, good. I'm going to give you more, as much as you can take. Let's take a look at this one. I love you. Who is this man in love with?
Himself.
Himself.
You know that.
Because of the I.
The bold, large I.
Absolutely. How about the next one? I love you. Who's this man in love with?
Love.
What most people do not realize is that when you fall in love for a period of 6 months to 3 years, your brain will release serotonin, endorphins, norepinephrine, and dopamine, the neurotransmitters that makes that other person look better, smell better, feel better, taste better, sound better. Everything about them's better. But after 6 months to 3 years, those chemicals begin to lower. And that's when you usually hear, well, I love you. I'm just not
in love.
Oh, good. So I'm not the only one that's heard that. So can you see this is an indication of what we call the mate hoppers, the people who go from relationship to relationship to relationship, trying to get that re-hit of serotonin, endorphins, norepinephrine, and dopamine. How about the next one? I love you. Who's he in love with?
Of course.
Someone else.
You had to think about it.
Why do you have to think about it?
Of course.
How about the next one? I love you.
Could be obsessed, or she could be obsessed.
This isn't just that I love you. This is, if I can't have you, nobody can have you. This is scary. This is a stalking kind of love. This is the kind of love of who you've been talking to, where you've been. Let me check the mileage on your car. What are you wearing? What did you eat today? Oh, who you've been talking to. He loves me so much. He's just so jealous of me. No, that's scary. Unfortunately, I've seen far too many women who have been victims in relationships equate this type of control to how much he loves me. No, this is insecurity. Pay attention to their focus is one of the things we need to pay attention to in critical thinking. So take a look at this. Cindy Anthony kicks out Texas EquiSearch volunteers out of her house. She ran to the news cameras that were outside her house, and she explained why she kicked out these people who paid their own money to ship horses, people, and a helicopter from Texas to Florida to help look for her granddaughter. And she says the reason she did it is because George and I do not believe Kaylee is in the woods or anything. Where was Kaylee Anthony's body found?
In a trunk.
In the woods.
No, in the woods near a telephone pole.
In the woods. She had been in the trunk. They had theorized that she had been placed in the trunk of her mother's car and had died there. But can you see the very thing that weighs heavy on the heart or heavy on the mind comes out of the mouth? Give you another example. Take a look at this one. A man was accused by his wife of not doing enough to help find their missing child. So he tells a reporter, contrary to rumors floating around up there, I am helping. Where would you like to begin your search for this missing child?
In a lake.
Absolutely. When you learn to listen to the words people use, you have 25 to 35,000 words in your vocabulary. You could have chose any word. You could arrange them in any order. Why did you choose this word at this time? This is the level of precision that I need you to listen and observe behavior as well as handwriting and spoken words with. Because you will be amazed at how much people tell you what's going on. And in fact, if anyone accuses you of anything, as is this case, this was the case, I don't know if any of you remember it, the man who took his 2 young kids allegedly camping on Christmas Eve in the middle of a snowstorm, and it turns out his wife disappeared and no one could find her. And when they finally zeroed in on this man, he set his house on fire and killed his children with an axe.
Hey, Frank.
Yes.
It's Janine. I met the woman, the wife, who he killed, who he killed. I met the wife's father at an event in Seattle, Washington. Yeah, he was at an event I was speaking at for the Social Security Administration.
Holy cow. That is
amazing. The social worker dropped them off, and he was supposed to be supervised, but he grabbed the kids and wouldn't let her in, and then lit the house on fire.
So let's take a look at the accusations that Josh and Steve Powell made about the woman who was killed, look at all the accusations that were made, and look at what they were guilty of themselves. Can you see, here's a behavioral analysis principle. In order for me to hurt you, I have to think of what's going to hurt. And what I often do is I can only think of what's going to hurt you by thinking of what's going to hurt me. So this is why when you hear people make accusations, they are often guilty of the very behavior that they're accusing you of. Who is the first person to accuse someone of cheating in a relationship?
The cheater.
Right. Why? Because what weighs heavy on their mind and in their heart comes out of the mouth. So pay attention to their focus. What is the emergency? Look and listen to every single word. Or how about this one? And this is what you want to listen to, the themes in the language. Listen to the word choice. It often gives you clues as to things that are going on that people are subconsciously or unconsciously aware of how much information that they're giving you. So let's go back to your kidnap note. Got your kidnap note? Go ahead and break those out. And let's start with, see if this will work. Will tell me who this is? I don't know who this is. You're wearing a purple top and you have glasses on your head. I'm sorry, I don't know how to work this.
It's Gina B.
Me? Okay.
Would you please read for us your ransom note?
Okay. I have kidnapped your MJ rookie card. If you want it back without damage, then give me $1 million to an account in the Cayman Islands. Otherwise, I will. And then time was up.
Okay. So let's take a look at what you said. I have something of yours that's of value. And then you said what? If you want it back?
Yes, without damage.
Oh, without damage. So you're subtly including a threat there. And then you said what you wanted. So you included 3 elements. I have something of value. I will harm it. And this is what you can do to get it back. Let's go to, again, I'm sorry, I don't know, a woman with a sweater with penguins on it?
Oh, right there. That is Judy.
Judy. Judy, could you read just your ransom note?
Oh, you're gonna laugh, but I said, I have your dog. Give me your time to go to church with me on Sunday or I keep the dog.
You're a very polite kidnapper.
Believe in Jesus or I kill the dog.
But can you hear, you've got 3 elements. I've got something of value. Give me something else of value or you won't get it back. And let's go to a woman with a very psychedelic LSD painting behind her. And she's wearing glasses.
Suzanne.
Hey, I'm informing you that I have taken your dog and won't let him go unless you give me $50,000. If you don't, you will never see him again. Your choice.
Okay, so again, very nice group of kidnappers. You won't see it again. You won't get it again. Did anyone say, I will kill, I will destroy, I will burn, I will send back to you piece by piece whatever I took? Did anyone use more hard words?
Unfortunately. I said I would kill your daughter, so I think I'm creepy.
So Diana, you're the scariest person so far.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I did it a couple times. If you
A couple times?
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear yours.
If you want your kid again, send $1 million cash and put it in a paper bag, or I'll kill the kid. We'll contact you for the drop. If you call the cops, they die.
Okay,
James
so
Jack. That's my friend James.
okay, so it's kill and die. Okay, so again, you're still all very nice kidnappers. So what I see in many of the kidnap notes are far, far worse. So let's go with, and who just was, what did I say her name is?
Describe.
No, she's got on a white top, a plant behind her.
Diana.
Diana, could you read us for your ransom note, please?
Yeah, so I said, I demand $1 million in cash to be sent to First Avenue number 1 in a dumpster at 9 a.m. tomorrow, or your daughter is dead.
Okay. So let me
By
ask.
the way, your accent makes the ransom note super badass. I'm just saying. For Americans, that was scary shit right there.
Diana, will you please read your ransom note again slowly, please?
I demand $1 million in
Stop.
cash.
Stop.
Yeah.
Did anyone notice what's different about her ransom note compared to others?
She demanded.
She started with "show me the money."
Mm-hmm.
Others were saying, "I've got your dog, I've got your kid." Some might even say, "I will kill your kid unless you give me money." What does the order tell me about you? So let's look at two kidnappers. One kidnapper says, "I've got your kid, give me $1 million or I will kill them." That's a kidnapper A. The second kidnapper says, "I will kill your kid unless you give me $1 million." That's kidnapper B. Which one is more likely to end up killing my kid?
B.
B.
B, why?
It's kill.
First thing he said.
Tend to put first what is most important to us. So pay attention to what people put first. So with that said, let's take a look at this ransom note. Mr. Ramsey, how many of you formally addressed your ransom notes?
No.
If you found a ransom note in your house and it wasn't addressed, would you take it and walk next door to the neighbor and say, "Hey, this must be for you"?
No.
No, but they went to the effort to say Mr. Ramsey. But let me ask you this. Why didn't they include Mrs. Ramsey? What is omitted is often more important than what is included. And gentlemen, not to slight men in any way, shape, or form, but let me ask you this question. If a child disappears, who is likely to do more to move heaven and hell to get their child back, the mother or the father?
Mother.
So if I want to get money out of someone, even if the father is a billionaire, who am I going to appeal to?
The mother.
The mother.
Absolutely. But this kidnapper starts off with Mr. Ramsey. And then they go to listen carefully. More important than saying that I've got your kid, more important than saying that I want money, more important than saying I will harm them, the most important thing to this kidnapper is that you
listen.
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 Who is listening more important to, men or women?
Women.
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 So chances are this note was written by a
Woman.
woman.
Another woman.
We are a group. What does the word "we" mean?
Work together.
Me, myself, and I.
More than one. What does the word "group" mean?
More than one.
More than one. So again, more important than saying I've got your kid, more important than saying I want money, more important than I'm going to harm them, they want me to know that it's more than one person involved. Ladies, something you should know, that men, as we walk down the street, as soon as we see a pretty woman, we puff up our chest. Now, why do we puff up our chest and suck in our gut?
Peacocking.
Absolutely. We are trying to impress. So this puff up, just as I can puff up physically, I can also puff up verbally. 2 times this person is telling me that they're more than one. So chances are that tells me it is one person. And that we're not just a group, we're a group of individuals. What is a group of individuals?
Individuals, not, they're not a group. They don't have a common theme.
Right. Now, are you a group? You're a group because you have a shared purpose for being here. But if I grabbed one of you and the neighbor who lived next door and someone driving down a highway and I put you together, that might be a group of individuals, a group of people who have no shared bond. So the most important things that this person wants me to know is they want me to know is that they're a group, but they're not very close. And they're not just a group of individuals, they're a group of individuals that represent a
small foreign faction.
Do you know most terrorist organizations, even if there's only 2 members in this group, Ahmed and his brother Mike, they want you to think that there's 1,000 people in their People's Judean Front or the People Front of Judea. Now, why do they want you to think that there's 1,000 people in their group?
So you feel threatened.
Power.
Right. So no group seeking to try and threaten you to give them millions of dollars are going to tell you, perhaps you've never heard of us. We're so small. So the word small means not big. Now let's look at the word foreign. And let me ask Diana, I think her name was.
Yeah.
Diana, if you went to Iran and you went to kidnap someone, back up. And you were going to kidnap someone, would you leave a note that says, I'm a foreigner and I have your kid?
No.
Why
never.
not?
No. Because first we should not start with who we are. We should say our demands. I will kill your kid. Please send me the money. I will not say anything about me. Yeah, but they shouldn't know that I am a foreigner.
What are you helping them do by telling them that you're a foreigner?
Could you please repeat? I didn't hear you.
What are you helping them to do by calling yourself a foreigner?
They can know who I am. They can identify me.
Right. So chances are you wouldn't tell someone that you're a foreigner.
Never.
And the word faction, what does the word faction mean? Anyone?
It's a group within a group that may not particularly embrace the larger group's principles.
It's a smaller group. They already told me that they were small, and now they're telling me that they're a faction. So if this was a pie, how much of the pie are they going to give me when they said, I will give you a small fraction of the pie?
Mute your lines, everybody.
Elise, will you mute your line?
Yeah, there was some noise in there. I think it was Elise. I think she's good.
Okay, so we respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, how many of you put in your ransom note at this time?
No.
No.
Why? Because saying I've got your kid implies what?
You've got my kid.
Immediacy.
Right. We have your daughter in our possession.
What do you think about the spelling errors and all this?
Oh, the spelling errors are very interesting. We'll come to those. But let me stick with at this time, which means chances are they don't have their daughter at this time because it's unnecessary. Why would you need to include it? And in our possession, which is unnecessary. She is safe. What does the word safe mean?
Different to everyone.
No harm.
Not harmed. And unharmed, what does the word unharmed mean?
Safe.
Safe.
So let's take a look. Everywhere where they double up, where they puff up on their words. We, group, small, faction, at this time, possession, safe and unharmed. And in fact, where was Jean Bonnet's body found?
In the basement.
In the basement of her parents' home. So in fact, when this letter was written, she was not in the possession of these terrorists or these kidnappers. She was not safe, she was not harmed, and they did not have her in possession. And it wasn't, as it turns out, not a lot of people, but chances are one person. So can you see by critical thinking and understanding something about behavioral analysis, you can begin to ask questions as to whether it's a phone call, whether it's a statement, whether it's a ransom note. You can ask questions. And the handwriting misspellings, one of the things that you need to know, what I often find when people are writing notes, they will switch from their right hand to their left hand to disguise their handwriting. And we can actually see that in the handwriting when they're doing what's called offhand. But you can almost impossible for you to escape from your knowledge. So if you make mistakes in spelling certain times, your chances are you're going to make those mistakes. Now, there's one exception to this. I will often find in people who think that they're smart, they will put blatant mistakes in their handwriting, mistakes of spelling. But give me an example. Let's say they misspell the word cat. They'll spell it K-A-T, but they properly spell the word attaché. Do you see how I might have a problem there?
Frank.
What about the big space between?
Frank, real quick. The Jean Bonnet Ramsey ransom note too was the second ransom note because they had on the piece of paper that embossed like from the pressure of the pencil or the pen in the pad. So someone sat there in their kitchen, wrote a rough draft, and then rewrote another one, correct?
Correct. So let me ask you this. How many kidnappers walk into a house and as they kidnap someone, they start looking around going, paper, paper. Where do they have paper in this house? Where's a pen? Let me write this out. No, that's not capturing the essence of what I'm trying to say. Let me rewrite it. Do you know most kidnappers, when they show up at a house, already have the ransom note written? So do you see why I only gave you 2 minutes to write your note? I was trying to rush you to get you to understand most kidnappers show up with the note already written. So can you see how everything communicates? And in fact, that there was multiple ransom notes written. The fact that we're finding that they are starting off telling us all these other things before they get to the main point are all warning signs that this is not a kidnapping. So if this is not a kidnapping, then what is it?
But why would they write a ransom note with a murder? I mean, isn't that just completely odd?
It's incredibly odd. This is known as the mother of all ransom notes because it was 3 pages long. How many pages was your ransom note?
3 lines.
So
Plus, it was that they asked for the same exact amount of money that John Ramsey got as a bonus that year.
Right, but I've talked to a profiler out of Philadelphia, I didn't mean to do that, who stated that the 118 he thinks is more indicative of Psalm 118, I think verse 27, which states, bind the sacrifice and put it on the altar as an offering to God. When John Ramsey carried John Bonet up the stairs, Patsy Ramsey had him place her body underneath the Christmas tree and had them all hold hands and say a prayer as an offering to God.
And she never touched her daughter. I talked to a cop that was there that day. He came to one of my events and came up to me afterwards. He goes, I was in the room when John Ramsey brought up the daughter, holding her like this, not like this, like holding her like this. And the cops didn't find her at first. The dad did, right? He went back down like, I'll give it a look. I'll give it a look. And then there's suspicious behavior with language behavior when he said, I went down the stairs, I opened the door and turned on the light. And in our world, turning on the light or shutting doors when telling a story is often connected with molestation. Either you were molested or you are a molester, because the act of molestation happens when a light goes off or on and the door being shut. Most people, when I say wake up in the morning, tell me about your morning. You don't say I woke up, I turned the light on in the bathroom, I shut the door, I brushed my teeth. You just say I got up and took a quick shower and brushed my teeth. You don't tell me about turning the light on or shutting the door. But people who start to bring up lights indoors are often connected. And am I correct on this, Frank? I know this is this is getting pretty deep down our rabbit hole here, but.
Absolutely, there's things that we look for and things that you never think of. I had a case of a police officer who wrecked his car, and in his statement he said he was driving his car, and as he was driving, the light came on, and as he looked at the light, he lost control of the car and crashed. And when they asked where was this officer before the car crash, he had stopped at a bar just to talk to his boss, and then he asked, well, was he seen leaving with anyone? Yes, he was seen leaving with a woman, and he later confessed he and this young lady were driving down the road having sex while he was driving. He had an epiphany, for lack of a better word, and lost control of his vehicle and crashed into a tree.
And we brought that guy in tonight. Chris Ulrich is here.
Hey, everybody. Happy to talk about it, Frank. I didn't know you were going to bring it up, but I'm happy to.
We heard from Frank Abagnale, The Power of Redemption, and here Chris is.
It changed my life, and well, I'm working toward this, and I'll take all checks for this.
And Kelly Haney was there as well. So Kelly was in the car with Chris. So Kelly, it's great to see you here. You know, the power of redemption. That's what
Thank you, Kelly. Thanks for your willingness to come on.
This is a tough group. Yeah, I'm finding it hard to return to my video, or how do I return to me?
Click on the icon, the camera icon.
Camera icon.
Down in the bottom of your.
Yeah, I think you stopped sharing your screen, maybe.
Did I?
No. Just go down to like Frank, next to your Spotify icon.
Yeah, down at your toolbar, down at the base.
Down on the toolbar.
Where all the icons,
take you right
down
back.
at the bottom of your screen.
Share. Did it work?
Yes.
Oh, you can see me. Okay.
Well, I see you.
Yeah, but I don't think he's sharing his screen anymore. I don't see his.
No, I stopped sharing this screen because I've gone way over my time, and I feel bad about going over my time with you guys. Hopefully, I've given you something you can use. If you find it valuable, Janine, I'd be happy to come back and discuss more of this stuff. So just let me know. If you have any questions, I'm available for questions now.
All right, let's open up for questions. We've had some comments here too, Frank, if I can go through the comments really quick. So some people don't have microphones, or they struggle a little bit getting their mic on. So say, yes, come back. Alicia, Nathan, yes, please come back. Carrie Richardson, so good. I saw a couple of questions. The alibi too funny. We love Frank. I actually kidnapped the rookie card, but you already picked up on that. Noises, that was earlier. You don't want to stand up. Monty Python fan.
Well, someone got that.
You say, I'm here all night. I love you to death. Kelly Cole said she's not leaving. We have someone here that's on, it's 3 in the morning, I think. It's someone,
Sure.
right? Diana, what time is it over there, Diana?
2:30.
2:30 a.m. Frank.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. Scrapbook. So, all right, let's see. Raise your hand if you want to talk to Frank, and I'll help him. I see Perry up there, so go ahead, Perry. Perry, P-A-R-R-Y, Perry. Perry's new to the group. Welcome, Perry. I'm glad you're on.
Hey, thank you so much. Kind of talking about us elsewhere in the world, I was just wondering, in terms of kind of scamming and deception and things like that, whether you've noticed from your time working, whether there's differences culturally.
Oh, all kinds of differences, absolutely. And I'm sure Janine's probably going into the body language end of it.
Wow.
But give you an example, like from a language end of it, passive voice is one of the single greatest indicators of deception in the English language. However,
Right.
in Russian, apparently Russian passive voice is perfectly acceptable.
Ah.
One of the things that I look for, it's a great indicator of deception or distancing in language, is a person will drop pronouns. However, if I understand correctly, and I suck at languages, in Spanish and in Portuguese, they'll attach the pronoun to the word. So like if I was to say like I have, there's 2 separate words in English, but in Spanish or Portuguese, it's like tenho or tame, something like that.
Yo tengo.
Yo tengo. So, and the way that the different changes in languages or nuances, and this is why working with a translator can be so difficult. From what I understand, a translator can either translate word for word, or, as has been many of the case, a translator doesn't translate word for word, but just kind of their interpretation of what you're saying, which is incredibly difficult to analyze when working with a translator who does that.
Amazing, thank you.
Any other questions?
I once worked with a translator out in Eastern Europe, in Poland, and the translator said my humor won't translate well. And at the end of my seminar, I had him translate in English. As you could tell by the body language of my translator this week, and he's like, and then I said, he's been sexually attracted to me from there. And he goes, I refuse to say that. I go, you're going to say it if you want to get paid. Said it, and he laughed. Everyone laughed. I go, evidently my humor does translate here in Poland. All right. Who else? Who else is going to share? I see my friend Penny, by the way. Hey, Penny, it's nice to have you here. James Beck, you got a question there, buddy? Or Marge? Who has
I do. My father asked me if I thought he was a sociopath, and I just said, and we weren't having an argument or anything. I just said, yeah. And he goes, huh, well, I guess that explains it. He wasn't even upset. And what do you say with someone that you know has a very flexible relationship with the truth? And how do you establish boundaries when you know you're going to be connected to that human, but you know, like it's a little bit of a mystery?
Two things right off the bat. I would highly recommend that you get The Sociopath Next Door by, I believe, Martha Stout. Excellent book in teaching you how to deal with people who have some of these proclivities. So it's The Sociopath Next Door by Martha Stout. And the second book is Without Conscience, The Disturbing World of Psychopaths Among Us. And that's by Robert Hare. Both those books I would recommend every woman get, especially, and if you have children, for young women. And the last book that popped to mind, I can't believe I didn't think of this first, is The Gift of Fear.
We talked about that a couple weeks last week.
Okay, good. By Gavin de Becker. All three of those books, for if you've got a kid in your life or a young woman in your life, I'd highly recommend to get that. Reason being is toxic con men are so good at what they do, and it behooves you, as Frank Abagnale was saying, it behooves you. Awareness is your first weapon to understanding what's going on. Having been married to, with my first wife, who was manic depressive, bipolar, multiple compartment, or what these call multiple personalities, as things were going on in my life, I was completely blind to them because I was unaware as to how people with mental health issues behave. And by making myself smart by getting these books and getting this experience has opened my eyes now that I can see these behaviors, and now I can develop the defense mechanisms to either prevent them from coming into my life, or once they are in my life, create the distance. So one of the things I find in what people, and this is the thing I struggle with, people often use the term sociopath, psychopath, or anti-personality disorder, and they're really pretty much interchangeable. There are some people who argue one's this and one's that, but what they're basically talking about is a person who has a part of their brain that's not acting the way other people's brains work. And what I find in people who are sociopaths or psychopaths or antisocial personality disorder is a part of their brain isn't firing as fast as ours. And chances are I'm thinking it's going to be in the prefrontal cortex or in the amygdala. So the part of the brain that's dealing with excitement isn't firing as fast. So what these people often need to do is to do something that's more stimulating, more exciting in order to feel normal. And I know this because I grew up with two psychopaths. One of the psychopaths I grew up with would as he walked through the woods, he would throw lit matches in the woods. And I would have to stomp on the fires that he started. We went to a 7-Eleven and he got a bag of popcorn or box of popcorn. And because the popcorn burned his lips, he set it on fire, walked back inside, put it on the counter and said, "Your popcorn sure is hot." So for many of these people, because the part of their brain isn't running at what caused normal, many of these people then will return to alcohol or drugs or sex or some other stimulus in order to raise the brain activities to feel normal. And something else I often find in many of these people is the part of the brain dealing with empathy is at a lower level. So these people don't necessarily always feel or know when they're annoying you, or know when they're, or even care sometimes as to whether or not they're annoying you, or if you're being bothered. Give me my best example is this. Ever watch Funniest Home Videos?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of those videos are what? Of men being hit in the groin. And for most of us men, when we see another man being hit in the groin, what do? We recoil. We go, "Oh, God." Yeah. It didn't hit me. Why would I feel that person's pain? And I feel that person's pain because something in our brain called mirror neurons that help me feel what's going on in someone else's life. What I find in people who many people would label sociopaths or others is their mirror neurons are not firing at the same rate or level that ours is. So it's not that it's better or different, or better or worse, it's different. When you start to understand how their brains work, you're better able to either to communicate and keep them in your life if you want, or create distance if you find that they begin to become negative or toxic.
Frank, will you tell everybody about the author of the handwriting book and how she warned her daughter about her boyfriend's handwriting?
Yeah, that's a sad one. Sheila Lowe, who wrote Handwriting Analysis, and I believe it's for The Idiot's Guide. I believe it is. I got it sitting around here somewhere. Idiot's Guide to Handwriting Analysis. There we go.
And handwriting, by the way, handwriting has nothing to do with the hands. If you were to lose your hands and had to write with your mouth or your feet, handwriting is a brain print of what's happening in your brain. So your strokes will go back pretty much the same way. So handwriting is often used in law enforcement for criminal profiling when they're trying to figure out people. So can you show me that book again? Was it Handwriting for Dummies, or what is it? The Complete Idiot's Guide to Handwriting Analysis. And what's her author's name?
Sheila Lowe.
Tell them what happened.
So Sheila saw some disturbing signs in her daughter's boyfriend's handwriting, and she tried to tell her daughter stay away from him, and her daughter wouldn't listen. and the man hunted down her daughter and killed her daughter.
Oh.
Only child.
And here she is. Sheila Lowe is one of the leading experts in handwriting analysis, and she was unable to convince her own daughter that these are warning signs going on. So.
My one time I spoke at Nurses Week. My mother was a nurse, and I did a little, you know, I only learned handwriting from you and from reading the books, so I'm not an expert in it yet. So I analyzed, I had them write a statement, a couple paragraphs, and a woman came up and I analyzed her handwriting really quickly, and I go, wow, moody, huh? I go, you're moody because her handwriting like lifted off the page like this, almost like a roller coaster. Every single sentence was this roller coaster. I go, moody? And she goes, well, yeah, I kind of am moody. My mother comes over, pulls me aside, she goes, why were you talking to that brunette over there in the pink shirt? I go, I was analyzing her handwriting, and I go, moody. And she goes, that's my boss. And my mother had been complaining about her for 6 years about how moody she is. And here I am. It seems like I'm being passive aggressive to the boss. Like, you're a little on the moody side, aren't you? My mother was mortified, as you might imagine.
So there is so much that we can learn from someone, the way they write. And unfortunately, people are getting away from writing. And one of the things that I found is some of the studies that talk about schools who teach children how to write with cursive handwriting have higher grades, lower pregnancy, lower truancy, and lower problems. And the reason being is the act of handwriting, especially in cursive, is forming neural connections as you write. So in essence, what you're doing is you're helping the brain to form connections between the brain, the body, and emotions when you are doing that cursive handwriting. And sadly, since so many schools are now doing typing, they're moving away from this, and we're seeing more disconnected behavior as we're moving away from cursive handwriting.
I wonder, real quick, I wonder if it also decreases stress and anxiety, because research shows that if we look at fractals, if we look at repeating patterns like on an ocean or even sometimes clouds, if you look at raindrops going down a window, it'll decrease stress and anxiety. So I wonder if those kind of repeating patterns, it almost becomes like a meditation for people, and it decreases stress. I'm curious.
Right. In therapy, one of the things that they had people do is make a series of figure eights to help lower their stress level. But what I often find in dealing with officers or military people who've been in violence and are suffering from PTSD, if I can get you to write every day for 5 minutes, everything that's on your brain before you go to bed, dump it out on paper, everything. It's called externalization. What I found is people who told me that they could not get more than 2 hours sleep a night, that when they write before they go to bed and just empty everything out, they've managed to get 4, 6, 8 hours sleep. And what we find is because of this, your brain, you've got short-term memory, you actually got sensory information system, short-term memory, and long-term memory. And your sensory information system takes a snapshot and holds onto that information for about 2 seconds and hands it off to the short-term memory, which holds onto it for about 2 to 7 seconds. And then it turns around and hands it off to long-term memory, but it doesn't hand off the actual image to the long-term memory. It only hands off the emotional interpretation.
Hey, Frank.
What I find happens with most people with post-traumatic stress disorder is that their brain gets stuck in a loop, and it's just like a broken record, broken record, broken record. So someone had a question.
Yeah, was it Angela Carter's been raising her hand here? So Angela?
I was just wondering if there have been any studies on the difference between writing on paper and writing on a tablet, because I journal and I find that journaling on my tablet doesn't work the same as journaling in a notebook.
No, unfortunately, I haven't seen any studies on it, but that's interesting. You're getting me thinking.
There are some things on feedback, like I do a lot in the dyslexia dysgraphia world, and you have certain paper even that has ridges on it, and there's a lot about kids that struggle with writing. A lot of times they'll have them do it even on a chalkboard because of the drag of the pencil. So there is something to that. And I guess that's my question. I mean, we've seen in most schools that they've taken out cursive completely and they're only teaching print. So how is that impacting looking and handwriting analysis?
Well, obviously it's making it harder. We can still analyze printed writing, but what we find is the quality of writing is so bad for many of these kids that many of them don't even know how to sign their name, how to sign checks. Many don't know how to read cursive at all. So it's causing a lot of troubles, but even bad handwriting you can analyze. It just makes it harder when it's all looking like spaghetti. And I saw a couple appeared on the camera. It looked like they had a question. I don't know who they were.
Hi,
Nathan. Hey, Nathan.
Hey, how are you, Janine?
Hi, guys.
I do clinical psychology, and one of the things that I do with my patients is have them write. And I talk to them about how it helps us process. It's a form of processing. You're absolutely correct that a lot of new research on PTSD talks about how it's something, a glitch almost in the memory, in the brain of forming those memories correctly and encoding those memories correctly. So when we talk about writing things down, saying it, you know, if you think it, that's the first step. Second step is to say it out loud. And the third step is to write it down, draw it, somehow get it on paper, bring it into the physical world.
Right. And what I often find is I get some pushback from people saying, I don't want those bad feelings coming out. And I'm like, oh, so you want to keep them in you forever? So when I finally do get them to start writing it down, they're like, well, I don't want to keep it. And I said, I don't care if you keep it, burn it, but I need you to write it down.
Someone wrote down here, Frank, and thank you for taking our question. Someone wrote, Martha, my handwriting's changed a lot from when I was a teenager. I'm guessing this is normal. And if I can chime in really quickly, and I'd love Frank's feedback, is you change your handwriting, you can change your life. Literally, every graphologist will tell you that. So I want to show you briefly, this is U, Y-O-U. And if you go for this, my first U, Y-O-U, goes up and then curves down, versus my second U, Y-O-U, goes right to the top of the line and stops. And the third one goes all the way through that line. If you begin to start crossing your bottom loops up through that line, you'll start to have more success. People who are here in the first one, it's you get just so close, you lose 100 pounds and you're almost there, you have a goal of 110 pounds and then you sabotage it. These are people that almost cross the finish line and they sabotage themselves. These are people here that might give up, and these are people here. So if you start taking all your downward loops, and emotional intelligence is self-awareness, and start noticing, wow, my downward loops, some people write your U's like this, Y-O-U. You don't even have a bottom loop. So you write like this and don't have that loop up. So Frank, would you comment on those things, about how you can change your handwriting, change your life, and then the loops?
Well, absolutely. One of the concepts that I teach is called the communication concept. And what the communication concept says is this: we associate up with good, down with bad, towards with good, away with bad, open with good, closed with bad, first with good, last with bad. And the same with our handwriting. What we notice is when people are feeling good and energetic, I believe, Janine, I'm not sure if you mentioned it today or when we were talking yesterday, about how blind runners will put their hands up in the air when they win a race. No one's ever shown them to do this. But we also see that in handwriting, is that when you're feeling elevated and energized, your handwriting tends to go up. So what do you think it tells you? As you're writing, all of a sudden your handwriting starts to go down, whether it's that Y or whether it's the words themselves starting to go down. There's a heavy sinking feeling going on. Why are you returning to the bottom rather than continuing to go up? And if you could connect your letters, why would you stop the connection? Why are you stopping yourself short? So can you see how you can make the connection, as Janine is saying, to success, and connecting the letters or following through? Because success is nothing more than fall down 6 times, get up 7. It's, in other words, it is that follow through that makes people successful, not the fact that they fell down, but are they continuing